animatronics. And that's just the beginning. He's also the only person who knows how to use the spring-lock suits. Again, once they were decommissioned, the suits were hidden away. Regardless of whether you believe that the killer used a golden Bonnie suit the whole time or you think he used a golden Freddy suit, either way, we know for a fact the killer was using one of the yellow spring-locked suits. And Phone Guy is the only character we know who had knowledge of A, where they were hidden, and B, how they were operated safely. Now, I know a lot of people have said that it couldn't have been Phone Guy because he knew better. He knew that they were dangerous and could kill him, so if he was indeed the purple guy, he wouldn't just hop into a Springtrap suit like we see depicted at the ending of FNAF 3. But there's one detail that everyone has been overlooking and that Scott carefully included in this game. Listen. Hear it? There's rain. There are puddles on the ground. It's dripping from the ceiling. The killer had been using these spring-lock suits safely for years, but in his panic to escape the ghosts, he failed to notice the wetness of the building around him. The killer had never encountered this problem before because the building had always been in a decent state of repair, but now it's a wreck. Torn apart by age, rain is able to seep in, something he didn't realize when he was in such a hurry to run away from the ghosts. And if moist breath can loosen the locks, you can bet some rain would make those suckers ready to snap shut. And they do, killing our killer. I mean, all of that makes a pretty compelling argument, almost an open and shut case if there wasn't one final major criticism to the Phone Guy theory since the release of FNAF 3. And it's a good one. The fact that Phone Guy seems to die during his night 4 phone call from the first game.
Hey, listen, I may not be around to send you a message tomorrow. It's been a bad night here for me. I'm kind of glad that I recorded my messages for you. So when I did.
If Phone Guy was the killer, why would the robot still be active after his death and the ghosts? It just wouldn't make sense unless you stop to consider the rest of FNAF 3's endings. The big twist in FNAF 3 is the inclusion of a good and bad ending. By completing the game normally, you get the bad ending, in which we see Purple Guy die in a flashback minigame, and the whole thing ends with 5 masks representing the 5 main animatronics with lights on behind their eyes. The good ending, meanwhile, requires using some not-so-subtly hidden clues to unlock minigames, then basically ignoring those games, glitching them out, and giving hidden dead kids cake to make them happy, obviously referring to the victims of Purple Guy. Beat the game this time, and the ending is largely the same, but with one fewer animatronic mask and no lights on. The obvious difference here is that in the good ending, the souls of the dead children are in peace. When they disappear for good. They don't go back to their animatronic bodies. But the bad ending? The lights on behind the eyes of all 5 masks mean that these guys are still active. Angry, restless spirits still haunting the robots to this day. Because here's the thing, the good ending doesn't exist until you, as the player of the 3rd installment, give cake to those kids during FNAF 3's mini-games. What you play in FNAF 1, though, is the aftermath of the bad ending, where the animatronics will die, but are still out for vengeance. Yeah, you made it through those first 5 nights at Freddy's. You overheard the death of the Purple Guy recorded live on the phone, but it wasn't enough. You got the bad ending. Even with the killer driven in the back room in a spring-lock suit, the lights are still on in these animatronics. They're still roaming the halls, attacking anyone wearing that much-hated security guard outfit. People like Mike Schmidt, an innocent guy just trying to do his job at a failing pizza restaurant. And as the final nail in the coffin, what Phone Guy says in his Night 4 recording perfectly foreshadows what we see in the games.
Maybe sometime we can check into those back room. I'm trying to hold out. Maybe it won't be so bad. I always wonder what was empty back there.
Think about what Purple Guy does. He hides in a back room, a safe room, hides in a suit, and despite getting sprung-trapped, actually does hold out until someone checks. Holds out long enough for the phone dude to find the hidden safe room recover the animatronic and set it free in Fazbear Fright. Exactly what the phone guy said he'd do in his final moments. And as Springtrap, he comes back in FNAF 3. Comes back, he always does. And with no real animatronics present in Fazbear's Fright, remember Springtrap is the only real one they've found. All the rest is scattered, probably located in dumps, which is why their bodies and faces are decaying. All that the spirits can do is appear as phantoms. Well, at least one, the puppet, who we see in his physical form roaming the hallways of Fazbear's Fright. So real, in fact, that we see his reflection visible in the pools of water under his feet, meaning he is there and unburnt. There's only one way to truly end this, and the murderous puppet burning the place to the ground. The puppet gave robots life, gave spirits peace, and finally gave the murderer the hope his long-deserved death warrants tried to. And that is the end of Five Nights at Freddy's story. No path, no movie, no fourth installment.
Oh my gosh! Oh my gosh, what happened? What's wrong?
Look! Okay, that's just a theory. A game theory. Thanks for watching. Hey, if you enjoyed these theories, show your appreciation by subscribing to the channel. Seriously, I spent more blood, sweat, and tears on these scripts than I have on the entire 4 years of this show. You know, hopefully you liked it. Hopefully you're satisfied with the conclusions I reached. And hopefully you decide to subscribe as a result. Now then, welcome back to the super amazing end card tournament. Where today, I just have a simple question. Are you excited about a Five Nights at Freddy's movie? Click over here to say yes. Click over here to say no. And oh my gosh, it's purple guy. Watch out, he's gonna kill you. Sorry, Scott Cawthon. I'm tired of waiting for you. This time you'll have to keep up with me. Oh, never mind. Hello, Internet! Welcome to Game Theory, where instead of waiting for FNAF 4 to be released, this time we're getting out ahead of the game. Or at least that was the plan. Scott, I swear you are the biggest internet troll out there. Oh, it's being released October 31st. Okay, let me plan my entire schedule around that. Never mind, it's now in August. Okay, fine, let me rework everything. Lol, here's the full version now. You, Scott Cawthon, are the reason I have this independence and Diet Coke. But today I'll be sipping that sweet, sweet Diet Coke in sweet victory. Because guess what? I win! Scott, in your rush to get the game out, to get out ahead of my theories and completely flim-flam the internet and shock everyone by releasing the game 3 months early, you missed a huge detail. Maybe before releasing the game, you should have spent a bit more time researching, because this game, as you've presented it, is impossible. Let me explain. Basically, it's all but confirmed at this point that in FNAF 4, you play as the victim of the bite of 87, and that this game is either his nightmare or what he's seeing in a coma as he recovers from his injuries. Let me run you through the evidence real quick so that we're all on the same page. First, in the months leading up to the release of the game, there were clues hidden in the source code for some of the teasers on Scott's website, with the numbers 8787 repeated over and over again. 2 numbers that anyone who hasn't been living under a rock will recognize as a key date in the franchise's lore, the bite of 87. This is further supported by the text on the teaser images. All of the pictures released on the site basically ask the same question, was it me? Which seems to refer to the actual attacker of the bite itself. But there was one more word we saw repeated throughout the teasers, nightmare. Hidden over top of multiple teaser images was that exact word. That, combined with the Freddy Krueger-ish design of the animatronics with teeth and claws claws everywhere. Something far different from how we've seen these things designed in the past seemed to indicate that this would be the way a child would imagine these creatures if he had had a traumatic experience with them, making it seem like what we would be playing would be a dream. Couple that with some evidence from the trailer. The first words are, "What is it you think you see?" making us question the reality of the images in the game. But there was also something that everyone seemed to overlook about this trailer: the appearance of the number 4. Scott doesn't do things randomly, as I'm sure we're all aware by now. And notice the movement of the 4. It starts off in a horizontal plane, like it was laying down on something, say a bed, but then wakes up to stand vertically before the trailer ends. Even that remnant red rectangle is meant to symbolize the bed. Everything seems to be letting us know that what we're seeing isn't really real, it's a dream, or better yet, a nightmare. Now fast forward to the game's release, or I suppose casually after the game's release, since it wasn't too long afterwards, and we see that this theory still holds. Flowers and ivy and pills will occasionally show up next to your bed. Classical medical supplies that show us that this is a child in recovery. Foxy, who's hiding in a closet, will transform back to a plush toy if you hold the door closed on it long enough, making it seem like this was all a dream or hallucination. And of course, the biggest piece of evidence of all, the cutscene that ends night 5, which, if you don't want a spoiler, click here to skip. All you skip now? Good. Actually shows the bite of 87 take place in the mouth of the golden Fredbear. This is further supported by the quote-unquote boss of the game being that same golden Fredbear, where in the final nights, he's the one who ends up stalking you. All the other animatronics disappear. You're being haunted by the suit that bit you. So yeah, that's it. All the evidence points to the victim of 87 being our protagonist, the character we're playing as in FNAF 4. Good job, Scott. You finally put together a game with a coherent plotline. Except you didn't. Scott Cawthon, if all of us are right in our theory, then you, sir, are wrong. Just when it looked like you were making a game that actually adhered to its own lore, you also made a game that is completely impossible from a scientific perspective. Loyal theorists, it's time we give Scott's latest bag of tricks a little lesson in real-life science. While frontal lobe injuries aren't as uncommon as people think, actually they happen all the time, car accidents, football, falling down, etc., having your whole frontal lobe bitten off has a much more profound impact on mental and physical functions. It would come with a whole slew of symptoms from motor skill impairment to nervous system issues, but the side effects we're most concerned with today would all be psychological. Removal of the frontal lobe significantly impacts the victim's ability to process certain types of stimuli, specifically fear stimuli. Let me give you some backstory. In the good old 1940s and 50s, psychiatrists often thought the best way to cure problems with the brain were to cut pieces out. Feeling depressed? Well, let's slice that out. Overly aggressive? That chunk probably wasn't important. As such, there are extremely well-documented studies of patients without frontal lobes, and what's fascinating about them was what happened to their fear response. Patients without a frontal lobe become uninhibited because they no longer have a fear response. Way back in my Fallout episode, we looked in depth at the most famous accidental lobotomy in history, Phineas Gage, who literally had an iron rod shot straight through his head, completely destroying his left frontal lobe. One of the most striking differences between pre-Pole Phineas and post-Pole Phineas was his sense of inhibition, and by that I mean post-Pole Phineas had none. He had no sense of caution, no sense of fear or self-consciousness. He was described to be impulsive to the point of being rude and vulgar in public. No fear, no anxiety, no social pressure anywhere. Going back to the game, one of the things Scott does a great job of throughout the FNAF franchise is putting you in the eyes of Mike or Jeremy or whoever. We feel invested in our protagonist because we are that character. But in this case, that's scientifically impossible, specifically because of the bite of 87. If the main character of this game truly is Little Timmy Lost a Lobe, he wouldn't wander around a house with the flashlight on and off. Why would he? He doesn't care, because tragically, he no longer has the capacity to care. His brain structure no longer allows it. As if this weren't enough, a frontal lobe injury also tampers with concentration and attention span. main character in the game is still supposed to be concentrated over a long period of multiple hours. But the thing is, patients without frontal lobes don't have this ability. In fact, they can only stay focused on what they see immediately happening in front of them. A child missing a frontal lobe who repeatedly turned a flashlight on and off in a hallway without seeing anything would lose interest. They wouldn't have the mental wiring necessary to concentrate on self-preservation. They would literally just go back to bed. The game is impossible the way it's being presented, because it would literally be over before it began. But the final and biggest nail in the coffin for this one is how frontal lobe injuries affect the imagination. The frontal lobe controls a ton of mental processing abilities, including dreams. You might think that an uncontrollable imagination will lead to exactly the kind of nightmares or hallucinations you see in this game, but in fact, it's the exact opposite. Rigorous studies have been done on the imaginations and dream states of lobotomized patients. While patients without a frontal lobe can have dreams, one thing they can't have is nightmares. Patients missing a frontal lobe carry their lack of fear and inhibition straight into their dreams. And why not? It makes sense. If the mind isn't registering fear consciously, there's no reason to process it subconsciously in a dream. Studies show that lobotomized patients can dream about ideal characters, money, fame, and praise, but they can't dream about the monsters on their bed, or in this case, the foxy in the closet, making the nightmare state of FNAF 4 impossible for the victim of the bite of 87. In fact, going back to the dark days of psychiatry, some patients who experience the kind of recurring nightmare we see in FNAF 4 actually have their frontal lobes intentionally removed to stop these dreams from happening. One famous case describes a patient who was experiencing a recurring dream of being chased by ferocious animals. After the patient received the lobotomy in 1953, yes, he still had the dream, but would instead describe it as being a nice dream with some nice animals. His visions in the dream were no longer threatening. The animals were happy, he was happy, and he was no longer able to perceive any of the fear he once had prior to the surgery. So scientifically speaking, there is no single way the main character of FNAF 4 can be the bite of 87 victim like Scott seems to have indicated. Sure, the game could be about another kid. Yes, that would be lame. No, this game is meant to be about the victim of the bite of 87. The poor kid who wasn't just attacked at the restaurant, but continues to be tortured through nightmarish visions, dreams, coma-induced hallucinations, whatever. I have zero doubt that that's what Scott intended. But the fact of the matter is, he just didn't do enough homework. A kid with those sorts of injuries wouldn't care about those things in the first place. He would have no fear, and there would be no animatronics, real or imaginary, that would be able to keep him up at night. Biologically speaking, nothing he would be experiencing would be any scarier than the fan. The fan. Sorry, Scott. Better luck in the movie. But hey, that's just a theory. A game theory. Thanks for watching. So that's the science of FNAF 4, but I'm working on picking apart the lore now. It'll take a few weeks, so make sure you subscribe to get notified of when that comes out. And to help you wait, click here to check out my all-new theory on how the characters in Dragon Ball Z pull off their famous Kamehameha waves. The science behind it all is actually incredibly cool. I mean, who hasn't wanted the ability to shoot energy beams out of their hands, right? So anyway, click there to check it out, or if you're in the mood for more FNAF goodness, binge watch some more creepy theories on the franchise by jump scaring this box right here. Now, if you'll excuse me, I'm gonna go get a lobotomy so I don't have a fear response to that fan anymore. Oh, the fan. It's purple now? Forget purple man, purple fan? Ugh, my arch nemesis lives on. Oh, and by the way, get comfortable. The Steam page for this says it's the end of the original story, which means there are gonna be plenty more on the way. We have yet to leave Freddy Fazbear's. There's gotta be Might have 87. Text? I must be close. One movie, 11 animatronics, 11 kids, one little guy, one killer, and purple backwards.
Yes, Batman.
Hello, Internet! Welcome to the Five Nights at Freddy's podcast. Oh, sorry.
大丈夫だよ。
Game Theory, the show that covers theories on other games and the two beginning ones between FNAF. But if I'm ever going to see requests for games other than FNAF 4 on my Twitter feed, this video needed to be made because I have a confession, Internet. I made a mistake in my last FNAF video. Not my research, mind you. My conclusion that this kid scientifically could not be the Bite of 87 victim was actually 100% right, both scientifically and, as you can point out, lore-wise. No, I was wrong in calling this the Bite of 87. I'm mad enough to admit my mistake. Hey, it's why they're called theories after all, right? Anyway, in this case, Scott was sure to let me know my error in his first comment on any of my videos on the franchise. Which is really exciting. It did leave me wondering, should I feel honored or trolled? And let me just say, because you were asking, I didn't delete that comment. I only delete comments from game theorist bots. No, I don't want your free PSN codes, okay? So I guess Scott must have deleted it himself. Maybe there was a typo. Or maybe a clue to FNAF 5. But before we get that far ahead, let's close the book on FNAF 4. First, let's set the record straight on where it takes place. It does not take place in Fredbear Family Diner, but rather the first location of Freddy Fazbear's Pizza, the one from the old phone guy tapes found in FNAF 3. But the spring-lock yellow suits are the only ones there, I hear you typing. You're right, they obviously are. But remember, phone guy's tapes in FNAF 3 welcome you to Freddy Fazbear's Pizza, not Fredbear Diner, before he tells you about their, quote, specially designed suits. Roll that cassette tape.
Welcome to your new career as a performer/entertainer for Freddy Fazbear's Pizza. Right now, we have two specially designed suits that double as both animatronic and suit.
Specially designed, i.e. not in existence during the Fredbear era. Plus, in that same set of phone calls, Phone Guy tells us the suits have become decommissioned after an incident where there were, quote, multiple simultaneous spring lock failures. What do we see at the end of FNAF 4? An incident where multiple spring locks fail simultaneously and a child dies. And let me be clear, because the terminology is pretty confusing. In the game, the word spring lock is used to describe both the suit as a whole and the individual locking mechanisms within that suit. A spring lock suit is made up of multiple spring locks. To have multiple simultaneous spring lock failures, like Phone Guy says, would either mean multiple suits going down at the same time, which is a bit coincidental and hard to believe, or that multiple locks within the same suit collapse at the same time, causing a catastrophic failure. Same instance when the child is squirming to escape and his tears are moistening the locks. Crunch. And besides, don't you think it'd be weird for Fredbear's Diner to use these suits, have them kill a child, sell the company, and then Freddy Fazbear's Pizza starts using them again? It just wouldn't make a lot of sense. Long story long, although Fredbear and Springtrap are the featured attractions in this restaurant, this is a Freddy Fazbear branded joint, one dating back to, as we see on the TV set, 1983. But enough about the timeline. I don't want to dwell on it in this episode. To me, having a general placement of the timeline is enough because the most interesting part of this game is the ending and its overall meaning. Like I said in the other FNAF 4 video, if this was just a kid, that would be really lame. So how does this particular kid fit into the overall lore? Why is this incident of 1983 so important to show? Who is the FNAF 4 kid, and what does the ending line of "I will put you back together" mean? Well, let me tell you, the evidence points to him being the puppet. The evidence first, that he pointed out the stream of tears down the kid's face, which mimicked the tears down the puppet's mask. Okay, sure, that was good evidence when we first saw them in FNAF 2, but at this point, those nice pixelated screens are on nearly every chubby cheek kid who's ever entered these restaurants. So alone, it's not much to know. While the tears themselves might not be interesting, look at this. It's a screen from the mangled minigame back in FNAF 3. This weird, crying giant silhouette was just amazing last game. And all us FNAF theorists just kinda glossed over it in our analyses, since, seriously, what is it? I mean, it kinda looks like a puppet, right? With its overall fabric feel and its thin striped legs. I mean, that's what I thought at the time, but again, there was no reason to bring it up since it just didn't fit anywhere. But now we have a new game and new information that might make this make sense. Look at its body position. Notice anything specific about it? It resembles a position we see our FNAF 4 kid in a lot throughout the game, including his final scene, peering down, 2 streaming tear tracks, and his face turned 2/3 toward the camera. Do you see the connection here? But not only that, look at what our kid wears. A black and gray striped shirt. And remember, this is in a world where all the other kids are generally wearing single color outfits. It's an oddly specific detail. Now I ask you, what's the signature look for the puppet? None other than black and white stripes. But besides those design details, consider that there's no sign of the puppet anywhere in this game, and yet practically every other animatronic is present in some form, meaning that this game likely exists at a time when the puppet has yet to be created. Remember when he just kind of showed up in FNAF 2, which I should remind you takes place 4 years later than this game? He just kind of... Well, this could be the puppet's origin story. This idea of kid as puppet also works really well with the locked box at the end. What's in there besides Markiplier's stunning face and buttery voice? A puppet. As we see in FNAF 2, he has a habit of coming out of boxes, and he's the only one who can bend and fold up into a space that small. But there's even more evidence when you look at the timeline. Now, I challenge you to ask yourself one question. What exactly is the child afraid of in this game? Why does he hate this restaurant so much? The easy answer would seem to be the animatronics, but that'd be wrong. It's important to note that at the time of the cutscene minigames, he's not scared of Freddy, Bonnie, and Chica. When you walk over the pile of plushies in the corner, we see that he considers these characters as his friends. Foxy is kinda in that camp too, but to a slightly lesser degree because his brother has started scaring him with the Foxy mask, hence the head being pulled off. Even the weird psychic friend Fredbear isn't a scary presence for him. So clearly he's not scared of the characters. Is he scared of the people working at the restaurant? The purple guy? Maybe, but that's not quite the full answer either. Again, watch how he behaves. When trying to escape the worker in the Fredbear outfit, he can't muster the courage to run past the show stage with the yellow suits. He collapses in fear. And when the bullies drag him over to the stage, he's freaking out. Clearly, what he is specifically afraid of in this restaurant is the yellow Springtrap suits, whether in animatronic mode or suit mode, which begs one question. Why? Well, the answer lies in psychic friend Fredbear. Look at the dialogue running through the kid's head. Hurry the other way and find someone who will help. You know what happens if he catches you. That line would be easy to write off as this just being a scared kid who believes the ghost stories he's heard from the dead-eyed girl he talks to on the way home. She's creepy. If it wasn't for one thing, this other line. No. Don't you remember what you saw? This kid actually saw something, a crime, something terrible in these restaurants. It would seem to imply that he saw another child get shoved into one of these suits. This would also explain the strange brown pixels sticking out of the yellow body backstage. A tuft of hair, perhaps? All of these details also fit with the character I've been lovingly calling Psychic Friend Fredbear. He's here, he's there, he's everywhere. Who are you gonna call? Psychic Friend Fredbear. Seriously, what is this thing? Sometimes he's a bear, sometimes he's referencing it, and sometimes he's a flower? Okay. At first, it seemed like the creepy little toy was nothing but an imaginary friend. That was until the final moments after the bite, when we see the bear's signature yellow text. But this time, instead of parroting back the kid's feelings like he usually does, he shows that he is clearly in possession of a mind of his own, saying all kinds of creepy things like, broken. We're still your friends. Don't you believe that? And I'm still here. I will put you back together. This isn't just a split personality of the kid or anything. This is a separate entity. This is a spirit. This is someone who knows the danger of getting caught by the people wearing those suits. This is the victim that our FNAF 4 kid saw getting stuffed. This is Golden Freddy, Purple Guy's first victim. And I know you're rushing into the comments now to say that this changes a lot of things and goes against stuff we've been saying for a while. But don't worry, we'll address it. Just get excited. We've pinpointed the identities of our 2 most mysterious animatronics. This is an awesome revelation from an evidence standpoint, but to be honest, it's a little disappointing from a storytelling standpoint. Here's why. We humans all have a proven psychological need to complete things. This need is called, unimaginatively, the completion principle. We want to fill in the blanks in the stuff around us so that the world makes sense and we feel in control. It's the biggest psychological reason why you want to beat a game, or even just an individual level. You know how you just can't stop and save in the middle of a level? You have to play until it's done. This is the reason why. Weirdly enough, it's even the reason why it's so hard to leave just one slice of cake, outside of sheer deliciousness, or leave out the last two pieces of a puzzle. I mean, even just looking at it on the screen. Earl, just put the piece in. Just finish the last two. Just animate the pieces to move over into the open slots. I beg you. Just finish the last. This isn't just you being OMG, I'm so OCD. It's actually because the brain is wired to respond to knowing when you're done with the task. The brain can now take the mental energy it was using to focus on that activity and use it on something else. But what happens if you don't finish that piece of cake? Or if you walk away from a game right before beating the level? Your brain can't put that activity away because it's still not finished. You literally continue to spend mental energy on it in the background, even when you're doing other things. As long as there are unknowns, your brain can't feel in total control and can't let things go. And whether you knew this when creating the first FNAF game or not, Scott Cawthon has done an amazing and infuriating job of creating a story that looks like it goes one way, but also looks like it might go. This keeps us thinking about FNAF lore, talking about FNAF lore, pestering our favorite YouTube theorists for more FNAF lore for weeks, months, watching every video released on everything from top 10 details you missed in the FNAF 4 teaser to top 10 facts about the cupcake. The cupcake! 10 facts about the cupcake. Seriously. Once we're into the lore, our brains literally cannot let the pieces go until there's some kind of resolution. But Scott has done such a good job of piecing the game once that the pieces never quite feel like they fit the way that feels satisfying. We never get that moment of ROLAIDS. It spells relief. So we want the pieces to put together cleanly, and the problem with FNAF is that while there's plenty of evidence for the story to go one way, there's also evidence for it going somewhere else. Try this one on for size. Well, there's a lot of evidence for the kid in FNAF 4 being the puppet. You bet my bottom dollar that's the assumption it's got. And then from a storytelling standpoint, more pieces actually fit together if the FNAF 4 kid becomes Golden Freddy and not the puppet. This would make our first victim, the one our FNAF 4 kid sees get killed, the puppet, like we've been hypothesizing since FNAF 2. Suddenly, you have a group of 5 kids celebrating a birthday, one kid associated with each animatronic, with the one representing Golden Freddy being the odd man out. And this scenario perfectly fits the party would end up this day minigame, where 5 souls from 5 kids, each representing a different animatronic, reunite to celebrate a birthday that never really happened. It actually creates a beautiful story of redemption, forgiveness, a reunion of brothers. And yeah, I know that Snowden started about the size of the there's an eventual minigame, okay, literalizing the size of it seems to be a bit of a stretch. It goes even further than that. In the FNAF 2 Gifts minigame, the puppet gives life to the dead children. With Golden Freddy as the odd man out, he doesn't get a mask and does a ghostly jump scare at the end. That would reflect the 4 bullies getting killed in the the guy responsible for this incident, while the one, Golden Freddy, dies somewhere else, like a hospital bed. We do see the IV and pills and flowers, and as a result, that's why the puppet, the first victim, is able to reach those 4 kids' souls and save them, while Golden Freddy has to behave like a ghost. It also gels with the idea that the Take minigame represents the first victim at the first location, and why the puppet is always the jump scare, because he's the kid we just watched get killed. So a lot of storytelling pieces fit together, but at the end of the day, that leaves us with too many questions about why Golden Freddy is talking to our FNAF 4 kid. A spirit needs to be inhabiting that bear for the story to make sense, and Scott certainly put in plenty of evidence that leads us to believe that the FNAF 4 kid is the puppet. The FNAF 4 kid needs to have seen a tragic, scary incident to make it to the restaurant, which means he can't have been the first kid to have been killed. In short, the challenge here is that you have a choice. There's more evidence for our FNAF 4 kid becoming the puppet, but the resulting story is more satisfying for him to become Golden Freddy. And either side leaves you wanting more, because not all the evidence works in either scenario. And that is the true secret to FNAF. The completion principle demands that we get answers, that the scraps of evidence across the 4 games come together cleanly. But if and when they do, our brains will just be able to move on and forget about it, making it just another game that we played and is collecting dust on our shelf, or taking up memory space in our Steam account, I guess. In the meantime, good on Scott for making sure FNAF is always on our minds. He didn't do it by giving us endless levels or a whole bunch of stuff to complete. He did it just by making sure the pieces that are there are never quite enough. So GG, Scott. GG. And GG to all of you too, theorists. All of us. For trying to complete the story and solve the mysteries. I may complain about it, but honestly, I've been having a blast. It's like the Gravity Falls of video games. It's been my honor to work with all of you on this quest over the last year, and I look forward to trying to quest. In fact, since this has been a video many of you have been waiting for a long time, now that it's finally out this Thursday at 4 o'clock p.m. Pacific time, I'll be live streaming right here on the Game Theorist channel, answering all the remaining questions you have about the FNAF franchise, touching on things I didn't get to cover in this episode, like the presence of Mangle in FNAF 4, while also looking at some of the theories that you've been submitting to me over the last year. So if you have a question you want answered or a theory you want addressed between now and Thursday at 4 o'clock p.m. PST, tweet me at MattPatGT with the hashtag GT. I'll be reading your burning questions and answering them to the best of my ability. And who knows, we may even be able to get a special guest or two in here. So remember, that's right here on the Game Theorist channel, Thursday at 4 o'clock p.m. Pacific time. And to get you ready, welcome back to the Super Amazing and Hard Tournament, where I want to know, do you think the FNAF 4 kid is the puppet or Golden Freddy? Simple as that. You've heard the arguments for both sides. Click on one to choose. I'll let you know which side won on Thursday's live stream, and it'll all be our way of letting Scott know how this story to take shape. But remember, that's just a theory. A game theory. Thanks for watching.
やりますか
He's here, he's there, he's everywhere. Who you gonna call? Psychic friend, Fred Bear. I like switch keys at the end. Psychic friend, Fred Bear. That's it. He's here, he's there, he's everywhere. Who you gonna call? Psychic friend, Fred Bear. That wasn't it either. Damn. He's here, he's there, he's everywhere. Who you gonna call? Psychic friend, Fred Bear. That was it. Today, we end the horror. Today, we solve FNAF.
やるさ静かな海は嫌いじゃない
Hello, Internet! Welcome to Game Theory, where, after months of intensive therapy, I'm back to finally put the original FNAF tetralogy to rest. It's done. No more Halloween updates, no more FNAF 5 rumors, and no more fan. Suck on that, you multi-bladed propeller of air. So shortly after my last Freddy theory, I arranged a live stream with some fellow FNAFers to close the book on the series. And what happened was something that none of us expected.
We have it and we're back.
No, not the stream issues. Scott started talking to us. Well, kinda. He kept updating his site, scottgames.com, with cryptic messages as to the true meaning of the game. What is seen in shadows is easily misunderstood in the mind of a child. In the FNAF 4 minigame, why wouldn't a tiny toy Chica be missing her feet? And finally, 4 games, 1 story. It was incredible! After a year of taking shots in the dark, finally we were, in a way, hearing back from the man who knew all the answers. Scott Coffey, the creator, was reaching out from the shadows to give us, for pretty much the first time ever, concrete hints as to where to look. But what did these cryptic images mean? In the moment, the best I could do was this. Is it possible that FNAF 2 didn't actually happen? But in the days that followed, those 3 clues led theorists on Reddit, Steam, and YouTube to completely throw out everything that they knew about the franchise. What if we were looking at the franchise all wrong? Instead of counting animatronic toes, calculating minimum wage rates, and tracking Purple Guy's work history, maybe we needed to take a step back. What if everything in FNAF was just a dream? That's right, a FNAF dream theory that everything we play through these games was created in the mind of the FNAF 4's crying child. It sounds like a cop-out, right? Like a lazy storytelling cliche. Maybe. But stay with me. Even if you think you've heard parts of this theory before, you'll want to stick around. I've unearthed the clues that finally put our year and a half of FNAF speculating to rest. Of the 3 clues Scott gave us that day, the most damning one was the last one. Why would Tiny Toy Chica be missing her beak? What? In the FNAF 4 minigame, you can talk to a small girl on the playground with toy versions of Bonnie, Freddy, and Chica, but her beak is missing? During the stream, we were all like, Scott, please. But when we looked, sure enough, there it was. A few orange pixels laying on the ground. What? Seriously? This was the crucial detail all of us had missed. And yet, for as absurd as it may sound, those 5 pixels changed everything, upending a year worth of theorizing, because that missing beak directly parallels FNAF 2's new version of Chica, who loses her beak when she goes on the attack. It was something we all had written off as a graphical glitch or a design choice, not as a clue to the meaning of the entire series. And yet, here it was from the creator's mouth. That is when it started to click. FNAF 2's shiny new animatronics. What are they called? Toy animatronics. And that's not just a cute name the community came up with, like Freddles. It's right there in the custom night menu. It's canon. That's a strange name for a bunch of robots, right? Unless it's meant to be taken literally, and then they're all just a bunch of oh my god. What if they are toys, and this is all just a dream scenario inspired by these little guys? Well, let's keep going with this toy clue. I mean, obviously, the toy animatronics are shiny, plastic-looking fake, just like a small plastic action figure would be. But it explains a bigger question about FNAF 2, the look and design of Mangle. I mean, seriously, the story we're told to believe in this game is pretty absurd, that kids just rip it apart and put it back together again, and so the employees just leave it as a mangled collection of parts for small children to play with. What parents would ever be comfortable letting little Timmy touch that thing? Oh, and here's a cute thing for you to play with. Oh my gosh! Who could have seen that coming? But if we assume FNAF 2 is in the mind of a child who has seen all these toys, Mangle makes a whole lot more sense. He's just a dismantled toy. Think about Sid from Toy Story, who fuses various toys together to create hideous abominations. This explains Mangle's 2 heads. I don't care how much you redesign Foxy, no one planned him to have 2 heads. In fact, note that Mangle appears in a girl's room. An insignificant detail? I don't think so. The Chica Beak shows that this girl's toys fall apart, just like Mangle, the tear-apart, put-back-together toy. And toys explain FNAF 1, too. The crying child of FNAF 4 has 4 plushies in his room. The crew from FNAF 1. Plushies, as in soft, stuffed animals. What are the original 4 animatronics made out of? Soft materials. Fur and fabric, not plastic like the toys. So much so that the one thing that we hear about them throughout the series is that these old animatronics collect odors and never get washed, just like an overused and overloved stuffed animal. But the parallels don't stop there. Why is Foxy out of order in FNAF 1? Well, the plushie he's based on is missing its head. How about Foxy's jump scare popping in abruptly from behind a wall? Awfully similar to the way the brother scares the crying child throughout FNAF 4, in his Foxy mask, no less. And how's Golden Freddy fit into this? Well, in the hidden FNAF 4 Easter egg we see on the TV that the show Fredbear and Friends features the Golden Fredbear alongside the core 4 of Foxy, Freddy, Bonnie, and Chica. That's your cast from the first game. The dream of FNAF 1 was inspired by this show and the plushies, hence it not containing any of the other animatronics. Even the fact that the child doesn't have a Golden Freddy plush, and that instead he has his imaginary friend, a psychic friend Fredbear, who appears and disappears at will, directly references Golden Freddy's ghostly behavior in FNAF 1 and 2. In fact, every game, design detail, and animatronic can be explained under this theory. The recurring elements of the phone and the fan, right there from some of his favorite toys. The fact that no one in their right mind would work in a place like this? Dream, firing an employee for something like odor is a child's imagination of what employment is like. How about the weird metaphysical hoops that you have to jump through to access FNAF 3's minigames? Well, dreams have weird weird rules where dialing codes into cinder blocks makes perfect sense. FNAF 3's Springtrap is directly inspired by the girl in her golden body finger puppet that pinches and traps her finger. The idea that the animatronics stuff you into suits comes from this girl spreading the urban legend that if you die, they hide your body and never tell. The naked endoskeletons come from his time trapped in the supply room. Balloon Boy is the dream version of this kid, excited to go to the birthday party. They even have a single balloon each. Even the oddballs of Shadow Freddy and Shadow Bonnie fit under this theory. They're the product of the crying child being freaked out by the shadows that Golden Freddy and Bonnie cast onto the wall. And while we're on the subject of shadows, Dream Theory even rolls up with the purple guy. Let's pull in Scott's second clue. What is seen in shadows is easily misunderstood in the mind of a child. Yes, he could be referencing the shadow animatronics, which are literal shadows. But what he's more likely referencing is the purple guy helping a fellow employee put on the yellow suit. They're in a dark shadow, and what the kid sees, or what the kid sees, is someone getting violently stuffed into a suit when it's just a mascot putting on its head. Think about how dramatic it'd be if you were a kid and you were at Disneyland and then saw Mickey Mouse suddenly take off its head. It would blow your mind. But we all know that there's no murder happening. It's just employees going about the daily grind. In fact, that's why Purple Guy is purple. In the Atari-style games, shadows are represented not with black, but with purple, as indicated by the shadows cast by the animatronics on stage. That's why Shadow Freddy, Shadow Bonnie, and even the innocent employees in Dark Shadow Guy are such an unusual color. Still skeptical? So was I. Sure, it answers a lot, smooths out the timeline, but there was still one piece of the puzzle that was missing. One thing that was nagging me. It still felt like a convenient explanation, but not an intentional. Not something that Scott planned for the series. All I needed was just that one detail that made everything fit together. But then, while writing this script, it finally dawned on me. The nail in the coffin. The one piece of evidence that no one can deny and that, to my knowledge, no one has talked about in the months of theorizing. The detail that convinced me this theory has to be true. Are you ready to have your mind blown? Listen to the sound that you hear at the end of every night of the first 3 games. Grandfather clock, chiming the same song every time. Why would the end of my shift in an office be signaled by a grandfather clock chime? It wouldn't unless I was asleep, dreaming in my house with a grandfather clock right outside my room, just like the layout of the crying child's house we see in the FNAF 4 minigames. 6 o'clock a.m. when we get up. But now let's look at FNAF 4. How does each night end there? Because we're no longer in the crying child's house. We're in a hospital, trying to recover from being bitten. Hence the pills, IV, the flower Easter eggs. No hospital has a grandfather clock, but they're all equipped with a generic digital alarm clock. This, to me, is the missing link, the piece of evidence that took this theory from convenient explanation for a lot of the game's weirdness to definitive proof that this is what Scott intended. My heart is racing right now. I'm so excited about sharing this with you. It feels like finding the Rosetta Stone, the one detail that unlocks everything else in this huge mystery we've been trying to solve. But at the same time, it's bittersweet, right? Remember what I said at the beginning of the episode? It sounds like a cop-out, right? Like a lazy storytelling cliche. How many of you agree with that? If you're honest with yourself, I bet a lot of you. You'll notice across my videos I don't cover dream and coma theories very often for exactly that reason. They're too easy, too flexible. Because it's all a dream, weird stuff can be written off, logical errors overlooked simply because it's not actually real. In the theory world, they're OP. They're hard to argue against and can be molded to fit any random collection of details. And for a game like FNAF, where us theorists have spent thousands of hours combing through all the details, making and remaking timelines, bending over backwards to make every last piece of information fit together across the 4 games, it was just a dream reveal invalidates all of that work. It says that none of it really mattered since none of it really happened. And Scott knows this. Let's look at a quote from Scott in his update on Steam regarding the Halloween DLC for FNAF 4. Quote, "The story remains completely hidden. I guess most people assume that I filled the game with random Easter eggs this time. I didn't. What's in the box? It's the pieces put together. But the bigger question is, would the community accept it that way? The fact that the pieces have remained elusive this time strikes me as incredible and special. A fitting conclusion in some ways, and because of that, I've decided that maybe some things are best left forgotten forever, end quote. To me, the key phrase here is, would the community accept it that way? He knows that it's all a dream explanation would fail to live up to our astronomical expectations. It's underwhelming. What about the puppet? What about the oddly specific detail of the paychecks? How about Scott confirming on Steam that my FNAF 2 theory was almost 100% correct? It's this will the community accept it quote that makes me think Scott intended the dream theory to be official, but also understands that ever revealing it would be a huge mistake. Hence him keeping it locked in the box. I mean, you can already see it in the comment threads discussing earlier versions of the dream theory. People enraged by the sheer mention of this thing. Heck, you'll probably see it in this comment section, but it doesn't have to be that way. Sure, the nights themselves may be a series of dreams, but the lore contained within those dreams doesn't have to be meaningless. In fact, it's not. Think about it. The urban legends the kids are sharing had to start somewhere. That crying child clearly saw something that made him scared of these restaurants. And then how do the Atari games fit in? Are they just dreams within dreams? They're not. In researching this episode, I not only found the clues that solidify the dream theory, but also the missing links that we've all been overlooking in putting the FNAF timeline together. Scott's final clue about 4 games, 1 story may be a reference to a crying child's nightmares and eventual death in the hospital, but it can also be referencing the story of the game's primary struggle, the puppet and the purple guy. And next week, we're covering that on an all-new Game Theory, Saturday the 19th at 3 o'clock p.m. Eastern Time, 12 o'clock p.m. Pacific Time. That's noon for all of you currently trying to figure out whether that's midnight or noon. I know, I get it confused all the time too. Why am I telling you the time it'll be published and uploaded? Well, we're covering that story, followed up immediately by a live stream discussion where I, and hopefully a few other theorists, will be able to answer your questions as we close out the year with the definitive answers to this incredibly mysterious series. And I want you guys to be there so you can ask your questions and talk about all this together with us live. So remember, that's Saturday the 19th at 3 o'clock p.m. Eastern Time, noon Pacific Time for that episode, followed immediately by a live discussion with you guys. I cannot wait to share all of this with you guys. And in the meantime, remember, that's just a theory. A game theory. Sweet dreams. Nope, you're not dreaming. It is possible to put together the pieces of FNAF. It's just a nightmare trying to do it. Hello, Internet! Welcome to Game Theory, where it's another day, another FNAF timeline. Don't worry though, I promise this will be my final stab of putting it all together, at least until FNAF World. Maybe that means I can finally do Undertale. You guys want that one, right? Seems like a popular choice. Let me know in the comments. Now let me start this episode by making it very clear. I think the dream theory is indeed what Scott intended, where the minigames featuring the crying child from FNAF 4 are real, i.e. there's really a birthday party and he really gets bitten, and the events of each night at Freddy's across the 4 games where a security guard is attacked by robots is taking place in his mind. Like I said last episode, the clock sounds coupled with Scott's own statements both during the live stream and on Steam sold me 100% on that theory. That said, I, like a lot of you, aren't 100% satisfied with that explanation. Sure, the core gameplay sequences with you as the security guard might all be in the mind of a child, but the underlying story here about a serial killer stalking the halls of the restaurant are just too detailed and too well fleshed out to just be a wash. Here, to me, are the big issues that the dream theory doesn't address. 1. The crying child is afraid of those yellow suits for a reason. Remember what you saw. You know what will happen if he catches you. These are lines that his imaginary friend Fredbear repeats over and over. It feels a lot more sinister and real than just, oh, this kid saw something scary and misunderstood it in the shadows. 2. The puppet doesn't have a good explanation under dream theory. Clearly the puppet is one of the most important forces in this game, but he doesn't fit into the dream model clearly. A lot of other theorists have said it's symbolic of the boy's actions in his own dreams, but later this episode I'll prove that that's not true. If anything, the boy would be the security guard in these dreams, helpless and scared, not the puppet. I'm not buying it. 3. Scott confirmed the bulk of my FNAF 2 theory. This would be a strange move for him to go out of his way to say that a chain of events was correct if it was true. And finally, number 4, the Atari minigames. Under dream theory, what? They're just dreams within dreams? What is this, Five Nights at Inception? And then there are plenty of little issues too, like a young child's dreams being so detailed as to concepts that even most adults don't know, like sister locations and accurate minimum wage rates. So I combed over everything from the past year of theorizing to come up with the most well-supported, interesting, but also logical timeline of events, telling the story of the rise and fall of Freddy Fazbear's. Admittedly, there are still gaps and logical leaps, which I'll be sure to call out, but right or wrong, this is the flow of events I believe creates the most satisfying narrative to the series. So this one is dedicated to all you guys on Reddit, YouTube, Twitter, and in the comments who've been sending me theories for months. Think of this as my end of the year present for you. Right or wrong, this box is getting open. The story begins at FredbearFamily.com, first location as revealed to us by Phone Guy in FNAF 2, and confirmed indirectly by Scott when he approved my FNAF 2 theory. I don't honestly think that there's much to debate here anymore. A child is murdered outside the establishment by a mysterious figure, the purple guy, who escapes unnoticed. The victim's restless soul goes on to inhabit a puppet, which would then haunt the halls of a pizzeria. Boom! Done. No need to dwell on that. In the wake of the tragedy, the owners sell the name of Fredbear and the character's likeness to a larger company that was soon known as Fazbear Entertainment. From there, the timeline picks up in 1983, seen on the Crying Child's television set. To define the franchise, Fazbear Entertainment has distanced themselves from the last restaurant by redesigning Fredbear into a golden singer with a yellow rabbit partner. They've also rolled out a popular TV series, Fredbear and Friends, as well as a line of merchandise that includes both plastic toys and plushies of all the characters. But perhaps the biggest addition has been a sister location of restaurants where Fredbear's friends are headlining. Freddy, Foxy, Chica, and Bonnie, known as Freddy Fazbear's Pizza. And that is our first major revelation, that FNAF 4's Fredbear-themed restaurant and FNAF 1's Freddy Fazbear's Pizza location are open at the same time. We know this thanks to the Phone Guy tapes uncovered in FNAF 3. For those of you who haven't listened to those enough times to have them memorized, I am so jealous of your life. But secondly, let me refresh your memories. The tapes welcome you to Freddy Fazbear's Pizza, and then mention a tragic incident at a sister location which results in the yellow spring-lock suits being decommissioned. So let me translate that for you. For all of us unfamiliar with corporate buzzwords, a sister location is defined as another company owned by the same parent company. For example, KFC, Pizza Hut, and Taco Bell are all sister companies, with the parent company that holds them all together being Yum Brands. Yum is right. Lunch buffet, you are the best. Hashtag not sponsored. In this case, FNAF 4's Fredbear's is the sister location of Freddy Fazbear's Pizza, with the parent company being Fazbear Entertainment. Corporate structure for the win. What all of this means is that the unfortunate incident that Phone Guy mentions in the FNAF 3 tapes is the crying child getting jumped, which in turn is the inciting event that causes the two recently delivered yellow suits to the FNAF 1 location, the golden Freddy and golden Bonnie suit Phone Guy talks about, to be stored away in the location's safe room. At this point, the timeline's still open and hidden in the back of the restaurants. Enter Purple Guy. Shortly after the yellow suits get decommissioned, more FNAF 3 tapes reveal Phone Guy warning employees to not bring customers back to the safe room and to stop moving the yellow Bonnie suits. In the following days, the safe room gets sealed with a request to not tell family, friends, or insurance representatives. Now, Phone Guy may be unaware of what's happening here, but we're not. This is June 26th, 1983, the date of the missing children incident we learn about through the newspaper clippings pasted on the walls of FNAF 1, where, in the middle of the day, an employee dresses in a costume, lures 5 children to the back, kills them, and then stuffs their bodies into the suits. Although he's caught and taken into custody, the fact that all of this takes place in the restaurant's safe room, which remember are invisible to animatronics and security cameras, means that the actual murders aren't on camera. As such, the bodies of the children remain missing, hidden in the suits, and the killer can't be charged due to a lack of evidence. This is all represented in the game by the Foxy Go 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 minigame, where the layout of the game parallels the layout of the FNAF 1 location. Pirate Cove, to the right, a dining area. And as we see in the Give Gifts, Give Life minigame from FNAF 2, the puppet saves the kids by giving them life inside the animatronic suits. So now at this point in the timeline, we have Freddy, Foxy, Chica, Bonnie, Golden Freddy, and the puppet alive and well. Well, not alive, dead, and then reborn. You get the idea. Also, the company closes up the safe rooms to avoid all liability for the murders, and eventually the pizzeria is closed and the old animatronics retired due to the health conditions of the restaurant. As we see once again in the newspaper clippings from FNAF 1, the smell of rotting bodies inside the machines starts stinking up the place. So now let's pause there for a second. Up to now, everything has been pretty well substantiated with evidence, but before we get too much further, let's take a minute back with the crying child. Remember, one of my biggest concerns about Dream Theory is that the crying child is scared of the yellow suits, but there's no real good explanation as to why. So what if the reason the crying child is scared of the yellow suits is because he saw the missing children's incident? What if he saw the employee dressed up as a yellow animatronic luring the children away? Yes, this would mean that the missing children's incident would happen before the yellow suits are retired and before the kid gets bitten, but it's a theory that works for a lot of different reasons. First, he's always at the pizzerias, especially towards the end of the day, so he'd definitely be in a position to see something like this. Second, it explains his irrational fear of the yellow suits because he saw people get taken to the back and never return. Third, the lines of "remember what you saw" and "you know what will happen if he catches you" that psychic friend Fredbear keeps repeating makes a whole lot more sense now. And finally, and perhaps most importantly, look at this line. "These are my friends." If this were indeed true, this line takes on a whole new meaning. I always thought that line was weird. Like, what, they're your imaginary friends? I suppose, but then why would his collection of plushies just be with him when he dies? Why is that such an important detail that Scott chose to include? It wouldn't be, really, but what if they were literally his friends? That he knew the kids who went missing and got stuffed, and the plushies being there in the final scene represented not his plushies, but the spirit of his friends, the ones possessing the suits, being there with him as he dies. Now that gives you a reason to be scared of this restaurant. But we can take it one step further. There's one more issue with the crying child we've yet to cover. What happens to him when he dies at the end of FNAF 4? My original theory put him in the puppet because of design details, but in retrospect, that was wrong. Reddit user 3IEYIJ 3IEJ did an analysis of the color of the text during the ending sequence. All of the final lines aren't in the yellow used for psychic friend Fredbear, but rather a mysterious new off-white color for the final lines of "You're broken, I will put you back together." It's a subtle detail, but it's very clear that this is an intentional difference that Scott included in the games. So who's speaking? Well, who else but the one figure we know gives life to children dying in events around the Fazbear Entertainment franchise. It's the puppet, promising to right the wrongs of the pizzeria by bringing peace to the crying child's spirit. How does he plan to do this? Well, look at what he says. "We are still your friends." It's not "I am still your friend." The puppet using the plural here means that there would be multiple spirits present in this final scene that consider themselves friends to the crying child. But we also see this: "I am still here." The others are gone now, stuffed, leaving only the one with the ability to transcend the animatronic suits, the puppet. This makes a lot of sense if we again assume the crying child knew the kids who got stuffed during the missing children's incident. And look at the last line the puppet says: "I will put you back together." We've all been assuming his "you" is referring to the crying child, but consider for a minute that the puppet is instead playing the pronoun game, to steal a phrase from CinemaSins, and is instead referring to the plural "you." You 5 are broken, and I will put you 5 back together. He's planning on reuniting the spirits of these 5 friends. What makes me so sure? Well, we see it happen. It's the conclusion to the whole story. In FNAF 3's The Happiest Day minigame, we see the crying child's birthday one more time. 5 kids in masks representing the same 5 animatronics, with the birthday boy representing Golden Fredbear. You can even compare the locations. Both are long corridors with 3 tables and a 4th one slightly off to the side. The balloons are also the same colors: red, green, purple, yellow, and blue. Even the exit is where the Fredbear stage is, an exit that, if used, results in the bad ending because the souls don't get peace. It's where the child was chomped. And who's the one we see in this minigame putting everyone back together again? The puppets, just like he promised the boy he would do on his deathbed. And here's the best part. How do you get to this minigame? Well, by playing through a bunch of others, including the Stage 01 game, which you access by typing the numbers 395248 into the wall. Why are those numbers important? It's the hexadecimal code for the color of purple guy, only it's backwards. It's Scott's way of showing that the puppet is actively trying to reverse the work of the purple guy and the atrocities committed inside the walls of Fazbear Entertainment pizza places. From here, the rest of the story is surprisingly straightforward. The pizza chain reopens during the summer of 1987 in FNAF 2's bigger location. Fazbear Entertainment rolls out the toy animatronics based on the character models of their merchandise, allows them to free roam, and even equips them with facial recognition software as added protection against child murderers. I mean, there's definitely a pattern being established here, so good on them for taking preventative measures. However, as we all know, it's not enough. As we hear about from the phone guy and see in the Save Them minigame, the purple guy, now the daytime security guard, kills 5 more kids within the walls of this restaurant. When the puppet enlists the help of the possessed Freddy animatronic to save the kids, the purple guy responds, "You can't, because it's true. You're already dead." That said, a case can be made that the puppet successfully gets these 5 animatronics too. Notice that before this, 6 characters were possessed, but now there are 5 new animatronics in this location: Toy Bonnie, Toy Freddy, Toy Chica, Mangle, and Balloon. 5 spirits for 5 robots? Quite the coincidence, don't you think? Additionally, we hear from Phone Guy that around this time, the toy animatronics inexplicably become more aggressive towards adults, but stay friendly towards kids. The only explanation here is that the 5 new child spirits are given life in the new toy suits by the puppets, but these spirits are angry. The pizzeria is gonna close, but not before one final birthday party, where angry and eager for revenge against their killer, these newly created, possessed toy animatronics lash out at their murderer, the purple guy, who they know as the daytime security guard. Except, bad news, purple guy is long gone. He did his business and got out. In his place is Jeremy, night security guard moved to the day shift, wrongfully attacked by a vengeful toy animatronic the day of the birthday, losing his frontal lobe and coining the now iconic Bite of 87 moniker in the process. This causes the location to be shut down and the toys to be scrapped. Animatronics from here on out are no longer allowed to walk around, and with Jeremy out of commission, Phone Guy volunteers to take over the position of Night Guard. Which brings us to our conclusion. The story comes to a final head in 1993. We know it's that year because of the minimum wage rate at the time, as well as the 11/12 date on the check. It doesn't matter if you're working night or day shift, all workers get paid on Fridays, and November 12th, 1993 landed on a Friday. Just fits. So Fazbear Entertainment tries to reopen the FNAF 1 location with the original animatronics and Phone Guy as security night guard. With the restaurant reopened one final time, we see this scene where the puppet is waking up the spirits inside the animatronics one final time. It's time to get their revenge on Purple Guy at last. Phone Guy gets killed, and as we see in the final news article on the wall, no one comes to the restaurant because of its dark, tragic history, with the franchise closing at the end of the year. Sometime after, Purple Guy returns to the building, dismantles the suits, but in doing so, unwittingly unleashes the spirits of the dead children, who attack and kill him, and if they're reunited by the puppet in Happiest Day, finally receive their peace. Well, that is until Fazbear Fright opens and unearths Springtrap, but with all the other animatronics at peace, the puppet must get his hands dirty one final time, returning to burn down the building and finish Purple Guy off for good. Or not. Like any way horror story ends. So what about the Phantom animatronics, Shadow Freddy, and all that? Stay tuned, we're going to talk about those during the live stream immediately after this episode. video's getting really long at this point, so I want to kind of close it out here. But as we close out here, I have to ask you this. Was that answer satisfying? You see, that's the beauty of the dream theory and the frustration of anything else. There's so much lore, so many puzzle pieces to fit together that in order to account for everything, the story can't get much simpler than that. Dream theory in this instance is so satisfying here because it explains all the messiness of the lore in broad, easy-to-understand strokes without you needing a PhD in FNAFology to understand what's going on. Sure, it is possible to fit the details together cleanly, but it's not an easy-to-follow story. It's almost like you need a full-length book to truly put all the pieces together. Okay, I get it. Scrap everything I just said. Scott's got a book. Another FNAF video made mood by a Scott Cawthon announcement. Or not. This is actually a last-minute update. I'm recording this literally hours before the video and live stream tomorrow, but it was just too important to leave out because it looks like Scott agrees with my conclusion. For once, the story is indeed just too crowded to be satisfying. When talking about the new novel, which, true to form, released early, he said the following, quote, "The truth is that after a while, lore becomes so dense that there isn't room for a story anymore. Sometimes the timeline gets so full that the only way to tell a real story is to have the story set in a different timeline." End quote. So there you have it. Dream theory for your simple answer, and a 20-minute long timeline for those of you who want something a bit more complete. So which do you find more satisfying? Well, let's talk about all of that live right now. It's been half a year, so let's do this. Let's solve the secrets of FNAF Sister Location months before the game comes out. Hello, Internet! Welcome to Game Theory, where today the goal is to solve the biggest gaming mystery of 2016 before it even exists. For once, I'm gonna get the jump on you, Scott Cawthon. Here's how I'm gonna do it. We all know that Scott loves dropping little teaser hints on his site, but this time, he's tipped his hand a bit too far. Enough for me to get a solid theory going on a lot of key elements we'll see hidden throughout his newest installment, Sister Location. And while some clues come from the teaser images and trailers themselves, the biggest revelations this time have come from the source code on Scott's website. So get ready for a comprehensive preview of what Scotty has in store, because by the end, we'll have looked at every, and I mean every element of this franchise, from the original series of games, to the novel, to FNAF World, to the ever-evolving source code on ScottGames.com, in our attempt to expose the facts behind the next trip to Freddy's. Now, Scott hiding hints in the coding of his site is nothing new. It was the source code that started the whole Bite of 83 versus 87 debate back during FNAF 4. But this time, it's a bit more than just a mere hint of what's to come. It is a fully fledged story. So let's take this line by line. This first big chunk at the beginning starts off like a collection of letters and punctuation, but upon further inspection, you can make out repeated numbering patterns and letter combinations representing days of the week. When pieced together, it becomes a schedule looking like this, listing out the days when certain animatronics are either available, booked, needed for a private party, or mat, either in maintenance or needed for a matinee show. Unclear which. It's also worth mentioning that 4 animatronics are specifically called out here. BY for Baby, BAL for Laura, and FTF for both Funtime Freddy and Funtime Foxy. Now, for those of you who don't follow every scrap of information about these games, let me explain. Reddit discovered that Scott had gone and copyrighted various names, presumably for these new animatronics, and here we see it being confirmed. More on some of these guys in a minute. The thing I want to call out first is that there's clearly a 5th animatronic in this schedule, 05OOS. Out of service. But who could this be? In the trailer, we only see 4 animatronics. Well, that's where this teaser image comes in. A few weeks ago, this image was up on Scott Games. A mask with glowing eyes and a tangle of wires, almost like tentacles, accompanied by this text. Quote, "There's a little bit of me in every body." End quote. Notice the grammar here. It's not everybody, but every body. This is our 5th animatronic, our out-of-service animatronic. I mean, look at it. This guy ain't being booked at any children's parties. But that's not all we can conclude about him. The text indicates that a piece of him, his soul, his mechanisms, whatever, is in every other animatronic body. This could have two possible explanations. Either he's possessed the other animatronics and is controlling them, which would explain the "don't hold it against us" line from the teaser trailer we hear over and over again. Or, more likely, he's the reason the other animatronics have life in the first place. This pile of wires is kind of like the puppet from the original series, giving gifts, giving life. Or maybe this is the puppet, a new and rebooted version of the puppet. Now stay with me here. One thing that we've largely forgotten about since his first appearance back in FNAF 2 is how the puppet character just didn't fit in with the FNAF world. Sure, as it kept making appearances in game after game, we just kinda accepted its role, but seriously, think about it. FNAF 1 through 4 were all about animatronics with big, bulky bodies and an animal theme. Then insert the puppet, thin and with a human face, complete with red cheeks, crying eyes, and red lips. Features that we haven't seen on anything else until now. Fast forward to Sister Location and we see humanoid faces everywhere. Ballora and Baby, rosy cheeks, lipstick. And now look at Day of the Tentacle over here. Notice that the ears can detach, separate itself from the main mask part of the face. It's the exact same silhouette that our puppet's face has had since the second game. Additionally, if you look at the trailer for Sister Location very closely, you discover what may be a very cool Easter egg. In the reflection of Funtime Foxy's cheek, we see something. For all the other animatronics, it's part of their body. For Laura the ballerina, we see the reverse of her arm and earrings. For Baby, it's her finger and bow. But Foxy here is reflecting something that has a bright red dot besides two colored streaks, aka a bright red cheek and two streaming tear tracks. It's like that time we covered reflection mapping to find Super Smash Bros. Hidden location. Could that be the puppet's face reflection mapped onto the model of Foxy's skull? Regardless though, if you ask me, we haven't seen the last of the puppet in whatever form he comes in, and based on the designs of these characters, Sister Location might finally be giving us the origin story we've long been waiting for. Now, hopping back to the source code, the next section shows us that there seems to be 3 file directories for various clients. The first is for a place called Chica's Party World, the second for private birthday parties, and the third for CRMN Institute. I can only assume Carmen Institute or Criminal Institute. This starts to tell us a lot about the setting and universe of Sister Location. First, many people have speculated that the industrial feeling setting shown during the trailer for the game is a factory for the robots. I think we can get a bit more specific. Considering the availability schedule that we just covered and the client folders with various needs for birthday party supplies, it feels like this new setting will be a storage facility and distribution center for the animatronics, responsible for shipping them out to various gigs across the Fazbear locations. The reference to Chica's Party World builds out the lore of the universe, showing another spin-off location to the restaurants, but also strikes me as just that, a reference, a fun Easter egg, referencing the one animatronic who won't be appearing in this new game. So far, we've seen versions of Freddy, Foxy, and a Bonnie hand puppet, but Chica is noticeably absent. And honestly, I think it's going to remain that way. For some reason, it just feels like she doesn't fit in this new world. And so the mention of Chica's Party World is a fun wink and a nod to a character that will be sorely missed. But to me, of all this section, the most crucial client is the last one, the CRMN Institute. Notice when you look at it that it has a subfolder called Project. This, to me, is incredibly important since every teaser image Scott has posted on the site related to Sister Location has been labeled project.jpg. Seems like a generic naming convention, right? Wrong. I went to an Internet Archive database and dug through the source code of all the past teaser images from all of Scott's past games, only to find that his labeling system has been very consistent. His FNAF World images were all labeled FNAFworld.jpg. Images about the book were labeled FNAFthenovel.jpg. Even FNAF 4 teasers shared the titling of simply 4.jpg. The fact that Sister Location's images are all labeled Project and that there's a client directory hinting at some mysterious mysterious institute and a secret project going on there says to me that if we're not headed to a distribution center, then we're going to a place where these guys are getting experimented on, which ties in with the trailer quote of,
You don't know what we've been through.
these guys are being experimented on, a project at some mysterious institute, and you can bet that they're not happy about it. But perhaps the most crucial detail hidden in the source code is the last line, a line that blows the door wide open on the story for this new game. Service log, maintenance, CO, or care of, AFTN Robotics. Afton Robotics. What the heck is that? It's a good question. If you're like 99% of the fan base and only know the games, this might not ring a bell. But if you happen to buy and then make it through all 500 pages of the Five Nights at Freddy's Silver Eyes novel, then that name sets off all sorts of alarms. You see, in the book, the Fredbear and Fazbear restaurants were founded by two men. The first is named Henry. He's the father of the main character and the creative half of the company, the one responsible for designing and building the robots that we all know and love. The other co-owner was, ready for this? William Afton, and he was in charge of the business side of the restaurants. Paperwork, taxes, things like that. So to see Afton Robotics in the source code teasing Sister Location is huge, because it means that the stories of Sister Location and Silver Eyes are linked. But get ready for this. Here's the bigger twist. By the end of the book, it's revealed that William Afton is what we fans of the game would know as the Purple Guy. Yeah, in the book, Purple Guy is revealed. Afton is the one who kidnaps and kills children while wearing Fredbear-themed suits. His first victim is Henry's son Sammy, followed by 4 other kids whose souls eventually possess the infamous suits. So, through these source code teasers, not only has Scott confirmed that this new game will be tied to the lore of the book, but we'll be dealing with a robotics company founded by and named after the child-killing Purple Guy. Now that's already a huge mind blow. And I'm about to go further, but before I do, let's address the elephant in the room, the canonicity of the book. The internet, by and large, dismissed Silver Eyes under the assumption that Scott said it's not canon to the first 4 games, but that's not entirely true. If you read his entire statement, and I understand that it's hard for you, internet, since it's 3 whole paragraphs that aren't summarized with a TLDR line, he actually says, quote, sometimes the lore of something can become so crowded that you can't tell an original story anymore. The first 4 games and the books should be considered to be separate continuities, even if they do share many familiar elements. The book is canon just as the games are. That doesn't mean that they're intended to fit together like 2 puzzle pieces. The book is a reimagining of the Five Nights at Freddy's story, end quote. And this makes sense, right? The first 4 games were crushed under their own convoluted lore and fan base dedicated to making every new toe added to Foxy mean something. Now, I'm not saying that's a bad thing to have people enthusiastic about your story, but it does become limiting when you make continuity errors or want to do something new with these characters. And with the Five Nights at Freddy's movie coming ever closer, it becomes even more important. There needed to be room to insert actual characters into this story. You can't make a movie out of some pre-taped phone tutorials and silent furry monsters. Thus, enter Silver Eyes, which builds out new characters, new faces, and new stories that can be told in the setting of these games. So yeah, the separate canonicity of the book makes sense, but as Scott said, it's a reimagining, and obviously there's gonna be a lot of crossover, and based on that Afton clue we just saw, Sister Location is gonna be bridging the line more and more. So does any of this matter? Yeah, actually a whole lot, because if we take the Silver Eyes Sister Location connection to its logical conclusion, huge pieces start to fall in place. Let's start by working backwards. Based on the trailers and teasers, Sister Location's main animatronic is this clown girl, Baby. But the teaser trailer isn't the first time she appears. She's introduced at the end of the FNAF World Update 1.2, something we discovered in our playthrough of the game over on the GT Live channel. Once you collect all the characters and beat Chica's Magic Rainbow, long story not worth explaining, you're immediately taken to a cutscene where a mysterious figure at a desk apologizes to you for creating a robot that cannot be deactivated. The bot's name? Baby. We then see a pair of eyes light up, telling everyone to take their seats before cutting back to the room to see the desk guy lying there dead, presumably killed by Baby. Now, many people assume that desk guy was Scott Cawthon since he's the creator of the animatronics and the minigames that you play in FNAF World. However, it'd be weird for Scott to kill himself. Plus, the dialogue from the FNAF in Space minigame, yes, again, FNAF World is a weird game, seems to imply that Scott is a separate entity from this desk guy creator figure. So if desk guy isn't Scott Cawthon, then who else could he be? Well, now that we know that Baby and Sister Location both have ties to Silver Eyes, we can actually identify who this mysterious creator of FNAF World is. He's Henry, co-founder of Fredbear's and Purple Guy's business partner. How do we know? Well, not only is he the creator of the games and animatronics, his death also lines up with the way he dies in the book. Stricken with grief over the death of his son, Henry commits suicide in the living room by letting one of his animatronics kill him. One that remains nameless in the book, but is clearly not any of the core 6 of Freddy, Foxy, Chica, Bonnie, Golden Freddy, and Golden Bonnie. In other words, Henry the creator is killed in his home by a mysterious new animatronic, just like we see happen to Desk Guy in FNAF World. The events just line up. Now that's all the stuff that I feel really confident about, but now let's have some fun and take it even further. Admittedly, I don't think that this is where Sister Location is headed, but there is enough of an evidence thread to take us to some awesome extremes. So let's have a little bit of fun with this, shall we? First, notice how Baby is introduced to us at the end of FNAF World as 2 yellow eyes in the dark. And what's the first image we see in that game? 2 yellow eyes in the dark, along with the iconic ending line from FNAF 4, I will put you back together. It's also the last thing that we see in the true ending to the game. 2 yellow eyes saying, I will put you back together. Now, I know what you're thinking. There's no way that those are Baby's eyes. 1, why would she say that when she wasn't even in FNAF 4? And 2, we all know that that line and those eyes belong to the imaginary friend, Psychic Friend Fredbear. He's here, he's there, he's everywhere. Who you gonna call? Psychic Friend Fredbear. Well, don't be so sure. Let me remind you of something. In the FNAF 4 cutscenes, each character has a specific color for their dialogue. Number 787878 for the brother, FFFFFF for crying child, 57C0FF for the brother's friend, etc. Psychic Friend Fredbear's dialogue for all of his lines is always FFFF57 shade of yellow. And yet, for the final lines of You're Broken, We're Still Your Friends, I Will Put You Back Together, it's a different shade of yellow. FFFFA0. Similar, yes, but definitely different from Fredbear. So very intentionally, Scott made this a different character, but in a strange twist, it's actually a color of dialogue shared with one other character we see in FNAF 4, Pigtail Girl. The one who knows that the animatronics come to life and get stuffed with dead bodies. Coincidence? Yeah, or at least we all thought so last year, but look at her design! Dressed in a skirt with reddish pigtails and big green eyes, just like the design of Baby. Hear that? The collective sound of minds being blown across the internet. But if the glowing eyes, shared dialogue colors, similar designs, and repeated line of I will put you back together didn't convince you, it doesn't stop there. Remember the biggest lingering question from FNAF 4, the girls' room? No one had an explanation for it. I didn't have an explanation for it. And yet Scott felt it was important enough to the lore of the story to show us. And now we might actually know why. What if the girl is a part of the crying child's family? First, it would explain why we would see her color of dialogue reappearing in his final moments. As a family member, she would be there in the hospital with the boy as he tries to recover. And if she shares a connection with Baby, it would also tie together the random presence of Mangle in the room. One of the other key animatronics we see in Sister Location trailer is Funtime Foxy, which we can confidently say is an intact model of what will eventually become Mangle. Again, we're looking at the major details. Yes, some things may or may not be there. Notice the lipstick, the red cheeks, and painted fingernails on Funtime Foxy, all of which reappear on Mangle. So in the 2 games, we would have Baby and Foxy linked. Is it a stretch? Absolutely, but then again, this is Scott we're talking about. To me, though, the coolest part about this connection would be in the name of the game. This whole time, we've been assuming that Sister Location was referencing some other spin-off chain of restaurants, or, like I said earlier, a storage and distribution center for the robots. But if the Pigtail Girl's soul is trapped in Baby, and she was indeed the sibling of a crying child, the phrase sister location takes on a whole new meaning. This is her game, a game about one sister's soul trapped in the baby animatronic getting revenge for her brother's death. Just don't hold it against her. You don't know what she's been through. Maybe. But hey, that's just a theory. A game theory. The ball's in your court, Scott.
You should subscribe for more episodes of Game. You should subscribe for more episodes of Game. You should subscribe for more episodes of Game. Sister location. Yes or no. Click on one to choose.
It's dark, they will awaken. The children's spirits and dreams.
いい響きだ
They
な
will kill you. They'll just walk out in the morning, stepping over your corpses one by one. You are intruder. None of you will survive the night. And what makes you think they will kill you? Because I am one of them. Hello, Internet! Welcome to Game Theory, still available to consult on the FNAF movie storyline. Seriously, Scott, I'll be waiting by the phone because I can practically guarantee I put more collective hours of thought into how the animatronic tones track eye colors, listing out the differences between pizzerias, diners, and rental services, parsing out your phone dot calls, and counting and recounting again the number of dead child carcasses left in your story's wake than literally anyone else out there. I mean, I've even gone so far as to do the unthinkable for these sister location videos. That's right, I reread The Silver Eyes. In an ironic twist, it took longer than the actual game. Now, here I am piecing together this script after I spent doing nothing but thinking about these games, writing and rewriting timeline after timeline to account for all the nonsensical Easter eggs shoved in this 4-hour experience. You know that your version of events isn't satisfying. That any theory I come up with that attempts to bend over backwards and cobble together every line of dialogue, design detail, and character motivation will be overcomplicated at best and inherently flawed at worst. That's not me admitting defeat. It's a fundamental problem with the series right now. This one just tried too hard to do too many things. You've got elements of the past 4 games mixed in with the FNAF world, mixed in with the book, all of which at this point have questionable canonicities, conflicting storylines, and competing dates. Couple that with characters that mimic other characters that lie to you, and characters that may not even exist across the different story threads of the franchise, and it's unclear if this is a continuation of the books, if it's a continuation of the games, or just an outright reboot of some kind. The best analogy I can think of is that it's like the giant human blob you turn into at the end of Inside. Massive limbs all struggling to work together to move in one direction, but all just flailing out randomly. And honestly, it could have been easy. With Scott saying that the original story was completed with FNAF 4, he could have just said that Sister Location was aligned with the book and FNAF World to start paving the way for the movie. But then you couldn't help yourself, Scott. You just had to throw in those FNAF 4 Easter eggs, and those put everything into chaos. It's not just me feeling it. Based on what I'm reading online, there's a sense that the lore between Sister Location is a game changer, but then they don't exactly know why or what to do with it. Struggling under the weight of explaining away Ennards and babies, Mikes and Williams, casual bongos and exotic butters. What's an Easter egg, what's a tongue-in-cheek reference, and what is actual canon? So understandably, there's some confusion about what's actually going on in this game, and that is what I'm out to solve in these videos. Picking Sister Location apart to definitively put together which details matter and why this is such a monumental game for the franchise's lore. So go ahead, keep your plots vague and convoluted, Scotty boy. I'm here to translate your madness to the world. First off, who are we playing as? Historically, the protagonists of Freddy's games have had a varying degree of importance. There are those like Mike and Fritz who, from all we can tell, were just names with the sole purpose of filling out the "to" line on a paycheck. Sure, they may have been retconned into some importance now, but they were never really intended to be that way. Then there was the crying child of FNAF 4, hospitalized and trapped in a waking nightmare. Slightly more important, I would hazard to say. And the game recognizes this as, during your first encounter with the new animatronic baby, she calls out,
"It's a strange thing to want to do, to come here. I'm curious what events would lead
私が引
here,
き
my
受けよ
first guess is to say that we're playing as Rick Astley, and Scott is just committing the most elaborate Rick roll in history. I mean, just look at that hair. It's an exact match, and let's face it, Scott has proven that he's not above trolling us. But assuming he has a little bit more respect for the fan base than that, there can only be one possible conclusion here. Sister location, we play as William
いい響きだ
Afton,
な
purple guy himself. And no, I'm not just saying that because the eyes in the ending are purple like literally everyone else on the internet's been saying. Sure, it's a nice detail that may hint at Scott's intentions, but it's not proof. For proof, we begin by turning to the in-game dialogue. On your quest to unlock the game's fake ending, the animatronics taunt you with these little bits of dialogue, spoken by a young girl in a British-sounding accent.
I'm still here.
Isn't this why you came here? To be with her again?
So we know that whoever the player is has some sort of connection to this
Nanda?
mysterious young girl, but who is she? Well, throughout the game, between nights, we hear the same girl pressing her father to let her pick the baby, saying things like,
Daddy just once let me go play with her. She's so pretty and shiny. Didn't you make her just for me?
From that small snippet, we can not only tell that our character is her father, but that he's also in some way the creator, or has some level of control over the animatronics. This in turn narrows the field down by quite a bit to two men, William Afton and Henry, no last name given, the two co-founders of Fazbear Entertainment as introduced in FNAF Silver Eyes. By the way, low blow, Scott, forcing people to read in order to have any sort of clue as to what's going on in the franchise now? Because seriously, without reading the book, you would have no clue the importance of William Afton. Oh well, that's what I'm here for. I read it so you don't have to. Kind of like the nostalgia critic. Anyway, based on the girl's accent and William Afton's similar dialect at the beginning of the game,
出撃
She
す
can
る
dance. She can sing. She's equipped with built-in helium tech for inflating balloons right at her fingertips.
it would seem as though we have ourselves a match.
You are the
Let's not be too easy there, Maury. We can be even more sure. The game's real ending will give himself to becoming animatronic fodder. She's scoop out your organs and replace them with endoskeleton cores. Now, this would really bother me. This is what we expect from our stories when we beat the game. Here I am wanting to finish my night and return home to my basket of exotic butter, but no, that's reserved for the baby. Becoming a flesh suit is somehow canon to the series. I wanted to write it off as jumping the shark, like, hey, we're getting a little bit too absurd right now, but then I realized that this is a franchise built on haunted animatronics chasing you through a pizza restaurant after they've been killed by a serial killer hiding in a mascot suit filled with killer springs. So, crossing the line of absurdity? Yeah, I think we're long past it at this point. Becoming a flesh suit is an oddly specific event to be integral to the lore, and yet, there it is. So we're left with two options. Scott's either completely lost it at this point, or he has some other plans for this character. And indeed, he does, as the novel once again shows us why this odd story turn is so important. In its pages, we're treated to all sorts of lines that make it clear Mr. Afton is the one who gets himself stuffed. Page 407. Quote, Charlie, there's something different about him. It was as if the guard, the man they had met, had been stripped away, and what sat before them was nothing but a blank canvas. End quote. And again, 2 pages later, quote, Dave is the fake name for William Afton in the novel. He's hiding out in another identity. Long story. Anyway, just go with it. Dave's body moved upward, straightening, but the movement was too smooth. He seemed to make no effort, use no muscles, and exert no energy. Dave's eyes opened steadily, glassy and without emotion, like the robots on the stage outside. End quote. And there you have it. That totally just spelled it out for us, didn't it? Like the robots on the stage outside. In fact, the book makes a huge deal about Afton's eyes, over and over again, like when the character John describes seeing Afton kidnap his friends on pages 120 to 122. Quote, the eyes. They were all I could see. They were dead, just dull and flat. Like they still moved and blinked and saw, but whatever was behind them had died a long time ago. End quote. Died a long time ago, you say? Like perhaps in an underground murder bunker, doubling as a robotic distribution center, perhaps. Now real quick, let's pause here and have some real talk to Ennard, Baby, and the gang. Guys, we're gonna have a bit of an intervention here. If If your goal is to blend in with the outside world and look like us, look like any other human, choosing to go with the purple eyes is not gonna be helping your cause all that much. Artificial intelligence? More like artificial idiots. Do your homework. Humans don't tend to have purple eyes. I mean, seriously, you have a blue-eyed animatronic just waiting to go. Look, there's Foxy. He has brown/orange eyes. Great. Anyway, I digress. Who am I to judge? Maybe we're all just left to assume that Afton walks around in those cool colored contacts. Anyway, it's not just the eyes that give away Afton as the animatronic's meat puppet. His overall physicality has undergone a drastic change over the years as well. On page 418, we hear that Afton started off robust and lively, a hefty man who had the ruddy geniality of a financially shrewd Santa Claus. Financially shrewd Santa Claus, huh? No one said the writing of this book was any good. There's clearly a reason why only 500 people made it all the way through this book. And I say that because on Amazon Kindle, they actually show you the most popular highlighted sections, and like, they all drop off by midway through the book, so I can only assume that I'm the only person who made it all the way through. The things I do for you. Anyway, soon after, our financially shrewd Santa Claus is accused of murder. He's released due to no bodies being found, and then he skips town. However, when he comes back, he's a changed person. Quote, Afton had been fat and affable. The man in the picture was sallow and thin, his skin sagging, and his expression unpleasant, as if he had forgotten how to smile. He looked like a poor facsimile of himself. End quote. So when he comes back to town, he's not only lost a ton of weight, but he looks like a poor copy of himself. So that's us reading the subtext of these lines, but you don't even have to read between those lines. Afton tells us directly in the quote I used at the top of this episode. Quote, and what makes you think they won't kill you? John said again. Because I'm one of them. He said. I mean, let's face it, it's hard to argue with that one. He is outright saying he is animatronic. Reading the book the first time, y'all assume like, oh, he has a kindred spirit with these animatronics because he loves them so much and he dresses as one and this and that. But oh no! After playing Sister Location, it takes on a whole new meaning. Now, there are two major complaints against the Afton theory. One, that Baby's first lines are,
I don't recognize you. You are new.
and two, that none of it makes sense if Afton bleeds out in Springtrap in FNAF 3. But there's an easy answer for both of these situations. First, think back to the FNAF World ending, where Desk Guy, in our last episode we established as Henry No Last Name Given, William Afton's partner in the Freddy Fazbear's franchise, confesses to building Baby. He's the creator, the one Baby would be most familiar with and not necessarily Afton. So Baby not recognizing Afton isn't all that much of a stretch. And regarding Purple Guy's death, we see in the book that William is covered in scars. Scars left over from surviving one major round of Springtrap failures. Quote, Dave had been shirtless under the costume and now his bare chest was clearly visible. His skin was horribly scarred, with raised white lines that scored his flesh in a symmetrical pattern, each side of his body mirroring the other. He raised his arms and turned slowly in a circle, giving Carlton ample time to see that the scars were everywhere. Also note that we never actually see Springtrap die in FNAF 3, just collapse into his own pool of blood and shiver there. The light never drains from his eyes. And Silver Eyes shows that it's not only possible, but that William has indeed survived a Springlock failure in the past. So could the FNAF 3 incident be the reason he has all those scars in the book? Absolutely. Also, according to the timelines, the events line up. All of the events of Silver Eyes take place in FNAF long after any events thus far, with the exception of Fazbear's Fright, which may have been a all in all, cool story, bro. We play as Purple Guy and Sister.
Thank you for selecting Casual Bongos.
But why? What does all this mean for the plot of the game? It actually explains a lot, but for now, I get really because now we're dipping into footage, F4 locations being tied to Sister Location, child experimentation, and the identities of Baby and Enter. So instead of rushing my way through it to get it all done in time, all those explanations for the next episode. Now that we know who is playing Baby, we need to know why and how it affects the rest of the series as we know. So click that basket of exotic butter to subscribe and be informed of the next episode. And in the meantime, listen to these casual bongos and do me a favor and vote. Sister Location, yay, nay. Was this the game that you were waiting for, or did it end up under-delivering? Click on what to choose, and I'll let you know next time how you all voted. And in the meantime, remember, it's all just a theory. A game theory. Thanks for watching. Game Theory, 7 million theorists strong. And a lot of that is thanks to this franchise. More often than not, when I talk to people about their favorite episodes of this series, it's teens, young, old, it doesn't matter. The FNAF series was their first introduction. So I always feel a lot of pressure on these videos to deliver in a big way. You know, looking back, they're some of my personal favorites. Not only am I proud of the final products, but I'm proud of what they represent, as the FNAF series has been a true team effort, branching out across every person who has ever touched this channel, spanning every editor who's ever worked on an episode of Game Theory, getting you loyal theorists involved with pitching theories, and covering every style of theory that I personally write, from more IRL episodes to more lore-based ones. We've used everything from books to spin-off titles, real-world math and science to source code analysis, teaser images, trailer hits, and even US trademark data. Looking across this series, it's incredible the breadth that we've gone to. And to think, I almost never covered this series before. It was going to be Slender, but then you guys, you loyal theorists, encouraged me to look into it. All based on a simple Twitter poll. You guys made it happen, and the rest is history. Funny how life goes sometimes. Anyway, like I said, I feel a lot of responsibility with these episodes, but I think today is my favorite of the whole series, because now we finally have all the pieces necessary to tell a coherent plot. It's not just some corpse kids and silent puppets and mauve murderers who don't say anything. We have personalities now, actual character, and most importantly of all, motivation. Motivations for why a serial killer would create a place like Sister Location. And believe it or not, the answer is actually quite sad. So the question of the day is, can a game make you feel sympathy for a child murderer? Because once you have the complete story, you might just see Purple Guy in a whole new light. One line across this entire franchise answers everything. I will put you back together. But before we get to all of that, let's back up a bit. Last time we established that William Afton, Purple Guy himself, is who you play as in Sister Location, and the one who eventually gets himself scooped. We also established that he once had a daughter who got herself killed at the hands, or should I say at the metal claw grip, of Baby. But there is so much more hidden in this game than that. By playing through the game and unlocking Sister Location's secret private room, players get treated to a shocking Easter egg. By typing the date 1983 into the keypad besides the monitors, the static blazes to life, revealing blurry footage of the FNAF 4 house, the plush trap hallway, Foxy's closet, and creepiest of all, the crying child's bed. We also get a clue as to how this is being done. Sitting there on the desk is none other than our good old friend, Psychic Friend Fredbear. He's here, he's there, he's everywhere. Who you gonna call? Psychic Friend Fredbear. A little less psychic this time, and a little more plush, cradling what appears to be a remote control. Now, many have said that this is a walkie-talkie, but it is, in fact, a camera control. Notice the buttons on top. Those are switchers, allowing you to switch between the different cameras you have placed in the environment. The wheel on the bottom presumably allows you to turn the cameras or potentially focus them. The Fredbears from FNAF 4 are just that. Fredbear plushes equipped with hidden security cameras, something mothers are using all the time these days to monitor their children, and also getting themselves hacked while doing it. See also the Watch Dogs episode. Creepy stuff. But that begs the question, why would anyone have remote monitoring of a child's bedroom programmed to run into a secret room in an underground animatronic storage facility? And also, why that house? Well, it's important to note that it's not just any house. It's a house that's connected to Circus Baby's Rentals. You heard that right. Sister Location is under the FNAF 4 house. During the Freddy Breaker Room Challenge, we're presented with a map of the facility. We see the entrance elevator, main hub area, and the various holding rooms branching out all around it. But what we also see, more faintly, are 3 other areas. Maps that should look pretty familiar to fans of this series. The plush trap hallway, the path to Fredbear's, and the crying child's bedroom from FNAF 4. No joke. Just like the vent system maps from previous games, the faded diagram would imply that all of this is located on a different level than Sister Location, i.e. above it. And as we can see, not just above it, but connected to it. In fact, while we were too busy freaking out over the ever-nearing Funtime Freddy, most gamers overlooked that as a part of that minigame, we were responsible for returning power to those areas of the map. They were even labeled Observation 1 and Observation 2. Observation? Observing what? It just gets creepier and creepier. Now, before you go saying that an underground facility facility attached to a house is far-fetched, it's actually something supported by the book in details I guarantee everyone overlooked while reading it. Page 118, our main character Charlie is outside her childhood home, which is also home to Henry, co-founder of Freddy's. While exploring her father's animatronic workshop, we get the following quote. She knelt again and put her hand on the ground, fishing around until she found a small screw in the bare dirt. She palmed it, then looked closer. There were small holes in the ground, exposed when she moved the loose dirt. Charlie ran her fingers over them, thoughtful, end quote. Tiny holes hidden under the dirt of an animatronic workshop, huh? It's an oddly specific detail that never gets mentioned again and never goes anywhere, but is one of those things that gets the theorist mind to tickle in. Because when I hear of mysterious holes in the ground in someone's private workshop, I think trapdoor. Hidden trapdoor. Or, more accurately, secret entrances. Could this be a hint as to a secret entrance in Henry's animatronic workshop into sister location? In fact, we can prove using more details from the book that it is still being used by Afton. Earlier in that same chapter, Scott makes sure to drop a few more hints that seemingly never go anywhere. But we all know Scott better than that, right? And now that we have sister location to reference, these little details start to make a whole lot more sense. Quote, the benches were there where her father had assembled and tweaked his inventions, but the materials, the blueprints, and the half-finished robots that were once crammed onto every surface had disappeared. Where are they? End quote. So we have missing blueprints and partially finished bots that have just disappeared, but it continues. Quote, Charlie, John said from across the workshop, he was in the dark corner. If the skeleton had been there, it could have reached out to touch him, but it's not there. Notice the italics here. This isn't something that we're doing for effect in the video. This is actually straight from the book. Time and time again, Scott and the team working on this book are emphasizing these lines as though they're pointing to a greater mystery here, that someone has stolen these materials and are using them for their own devices, that they're hidden somewhere in this world. But it's a mystery that never gets solved within the pages of the book. But perhaps most importantly of all is a paragraph a few sentences later that pulls all these clues together and may finally give us an answer as to what is in the box. You know, the box. Quote, John was standing beside her father's toolbox, and he stepped away as she came over, giving her space. Charlie knelt down before it. It looked as if it had just been polished. It was made of dark, stained wood. Glossy. All the tools were polished and clean. They looked as though they had just been used that morning, wiped down and put away meticulously, like someone still cared for them. End quote. Stolen blueprints, missing robots, pristine tools despite supposedly going unused for 10 years, hints at a trap door and William Afton lingering around the town in disguise. Quite simply, the pieces here add up. But again, that's hints that we can glean from the book. The bigger question here is why would Afton be spying on the FNAF 4 house in the games? Well, because it's his. As we established last episode, you play as Purple Guy, and each night you go back to your retro-themed house. At first, these cutscenes seem like they should just be absurd breaks from the spoopy action of the main game.
Clara, the baby isn't mine!
But look closer and you notice the details of the room, in particular, a very ugly lamp. A very ugly, very familiar lamp. One that we saw in, you guessed it, FNAF 4. In other words, this is Afton's house. And from his underground private room, he's observing his kids. Crying child, the older brother, and the girl who eventually becomes baby. As I suspected in my prediction video for this game, this truly is a sister location. A sister's location. And from there, all the parts start to fit together. So let's retell this story from the beginning now that we have all the pieces. Remember what will happen if he catches you. It's a line we hear repeated over and over again throughout FNAF 4, and now we know why. Crying Child has seen Golden Bonnie abduct children multiple times in the past. This moment in the back room that we all debated about whether or not it was a murder is in fact a child kidnapping. Silver Eyes proves it as it shows that Purple Guy kills by trapping the kids in spring-lock suits. Quote, Carlton was wedged inside the heavy, barrel-shaped torso of a mascot costume, with the headless top half of some kind of animal. His arms were trapped inside the torso section, pinned to his sides in an unnatural position. He could feel pieces of metal that pressed against his back and poked him. Dave said to Carlton, if you trigger those spring locks, two things will happen. First, all the locks will snap right into you, making deep cuts all over your body. And a split second later, all the animatronic parts they've been holding back will instantly be driven into your body. You'll die, but it will be slow. Having witnessed a scene similar to this, the boy is justifiably terrified, trying to avoid the pizzeria at all costs. But it's kinda hard when your father is one of the owners. Meanwhile, William Afton knows that he's been found out, hence the observation monitors and security Fredbears. He needs to be sure of his son's movements, even when he's at work, be it above ground or below. I mean, the guy may be a killer, but it's not like he could just kill his son, even if he was the witness to a gruesome murder at the restaurant. But Afton's problem gets solved prematurely with the fatal chomp of 83, a son William loved killed by the very animatronics he also loved, leading us to one fateful promise. I will put you back together. We've analyzed this line a lot in past theories because it's not only the final lines of FNAF 4 and FNAF World, thereby making it super important to this franchise, but because it's also presented to us in a different color than Fredbear's yellow. Someone else is talking here. And now we can finally pinpoint who said it, and more importantly, why. It was Afton. I will put you back together. A promise to fix his son, a broken son, in the only way that he knows how: animatronics. Enter Sister Location and the Funtime animatronics, not built for entertainment or for being worn, but built to help Purple Guy save his son. Built for capture. Although no one has yet found how to unlock them in the game, if you dig through the Sister Location files, you find a set of blueprints for the various animatronics, outlining their size and special features. Not only are they enormous, topping 7 feet in some instances, certainly bigger than a small child, but they're also equipped with things like 360-degree tracking, parental voice mimicking, and storage tanks. Look closer at the wireframes and you see that the storage tank isn't quite empty. Yeah, that's a child in there, curled up, hidden in Fredbear's stomach, captured alive, ready to be experimented on. Because Purple Guy is no longer killing to satisfy himself, he's doing it to recover his son, to figure out the secret of fusing souls into animatronics. You heard me. Afton wants to unlock the mystery of giving gifts, giving life. And if that seems like a stretch, just look at the number of sentient, independent, and fully aware robots in Sister Location. You not only have the core set, but there's also the baby babies and the mini Renas. Tens of sentient animatronics moving against their programming. And unlike past games where we received explanations like anti-criminal systems, dying guys in murder suits, or the products of a nightmare, here they just kinda exist. Why? Well, Baby tells us over and over in the trailer for Sister Location. Before the game's release, we had no idea, but now we do know what they've been through. Experiments and controlled shocks. Dozens, and I mean dozens of children captured as the Funtime animatronics executed on the programming that told them to collect. Also that Afton could learn the secret to reawakening lost souls. As we see in Silver Eyes, he knows it's possible as he's not shocked at all when the animatronics come to life at night. Quote, "They're home with me." Dave's voice was coarse, and the large mascot head slid forward and tilted as he spoke. Their happiest day. All they know is that you're here, trying to take away their happiest day. You are intruders, end quote. And as evidenced by the animatronics crawling throughout Sister Location, he succeeds in his goal. But in doing so, he pays the ultimate price, losing the second of his children, his daughter, when she ignores his warnings to stay away from the robots. A daughter whose soul goes on to possess Baby, as evidenced by the eye color shift from blue in the minigame to green in all the other times that we ever get to see Baby. Now flash forward to the beginning of Sister Location, a place where, as we're told in the trailer, memories sleep, anger is restless, and secrets don't keep. The children's spirits are mad and eager to get out, but how does a ragtag group of sentient robots escape? Even if they made it to the surface, giant endoskeletons roaming around would be like the coming of Terminator 2, and humans don't take kindly to that sort of thing. And so they've been forced to concoct a sneakier plan to escape. They've put together their individual abilities Afton programmed into them, like Freddy's voice mimic and Bellora's misdirection tactics, to create a new entity, the collective consciousness known as Ennard, a tangle of wires and eyeballs that serves as their final hope. And we know it's all the animatronics together because it refers to itself as we.
There is nowhere to go when we look like this.
As the teaser said, there was a part of him in every body. After all, throughout the 5 nights, Ennard uses those various skills and pretends in order to gain our trust, using the voice mimic to sound like Baby, be sympathetic, adopting the voice of the little green-eyed girl to make us compelled to move forward and save her. But it's all a trick, and by night 5, they've cleared out all the evidence, killing the other technicians so that no one can speak of the haunted animatronics. But note that those guys haven't been scooped. They've saved that honor specifically for you, the purple guy. The reason they're stuck there in the first place. Using Baby's voice, they push you into the scooping room, remove your skeleton, and inhabit your body. And as we see in the final scene, their escape is successful. The purple guy, the serial killer father trying to put his son back together, is killed by the exact monsters he first created. But not in an unhappy way. He achieved what he wanted, being reunited with his children. Page 411 of Silver Eyes. Quote, the voice of the rabbit was smooth and rich, almost musical. Dave cocked his head to the side so that only one of his bulbous eyes could peer through the sockets. We both wanted to love, he said in those melodious tones. Your father loved, and now I have loved. But hey, that's just a theory. A game theory! Thanks for watching. Welcome back to the
Super Amazing End Card Tournament!
Where last time I asked you whether you thought Sister Location was scary good or frighteningly bad. Survey said 97,000 votes for Sister Location and 30,000 against. So it looks like y'all felt that Scott got his groove back with this one. The follow-up question for today, which animatronic is your favorite? Maybe it's the scariest, maybe it's the one you most identify with, maybe it's the one you're most excited about gifting. Hey, no judgment here. You yell and sniff all you want. Whatever your reasoning, just click on one. At this point, there's like 1,000, so let's just narrow it down to the essentials and you can include all versions of that character. So here we go. Your options are Freddy, Bonnie, Chica, Foxy/Mangle, Golden Freddy /Fredbear, Springtrap, and Baby. Apologies to all you Balloon Boy and Ballora fans out there. Seriously though, are you out there? Seems like those two in particular just don't fit in anywhere. Anyway, click on one of the options to cast your vote. And once you're done, you have 2 options. Number 1, go and check out the FNAF playlist on the channel. Binge watch that sucker because honestly, it's a lot of fun to look back at those old theories and see just how far we've all evolved in our thinking about this game. Each episode is like a little time capsule. And you're like, oh yeah, I remember when there was only 4 animatronics and everyone was like, whoa, Golden Freddy is blowing my mind right now. Or option 2, if you're looking for a break from FNAF, might I recommend to you Salad Fingers over on the Film Theory channel. Seriously, if you like FNAF, then you will love my Salad Finger theories. It's creepy, it's mysterious, and it is ripe for theorizing. And it's brand new with part 2 of that theory coming out today, assuming you're one of the people watching this theory the day it comes out. In fact, you know what? Here's a link to go directly there. It's perfect viewing for Halloween weekend. Now, if you'll excuse me, I've got some Metroid and Mario theories in the works that have been on the back burner because of FNAF. So get ready for those. Enough jump scares for one Halloween. It is time we move on to some new theories. See ya next week. The Balloon Boys emerged from the cave, shaking back and forth on unsteady feet, their pointed teeth chattering loudly as they wobbled forward with staring eyes. Not again! I hate these things, Jessica cried. You and me both!
大丈夫だよ。私は任務中に眠くならない。
司令官疲れてない？出撃する。大丈夫だよ。
プロデューサー行ってきます。頼んだから完璧。
ここで決めます。
まだ大丈夫。
こういう時こそ最高に笑うわけでしょ。
完璧。
これでどうかな。
まだ大丈夫。大丈夫。笑顔は無敵だから。頼んだから完璧。オッケー。
こういう時こそ最高に。
頼んだから完璧。いっけー。ありがとうございました。私が積み重ねたものを信じて。
出撃する。
Sister, you and me both. Up top. Can't high-five me up top because you're a fictional character. Hello, Internet. Welcome to Game Theory, where... Yes, that's right, ladies and gentlemen. FNAF 6 is canceled. Looks like I had more staying power than you, Scotty C. Let's be honest, though. It's gonna be more delayed than canceled, really. And there's still the movie, the merch, a second book just released, a third book coming soon, and a fourth one on the way. So just like the animatronics, the series itself keeps getting reborn in new forms with increasingly absurd names. Wizard Freddy, Nightmare Chica, Not So Fun Time Franchise. Speaking of ridiculous new names for the same old cast of animals, let's talk about the latest addition to the roster, the Twisted Animatronics. Stars of the new FNAF book that came out at the end of June. Now, I'm gonna be honest, this book was definitely a step up from the first. It had 200 less pages. Oh, sick bird, y'all! You need a calendar, man! I mean, don't take that as too high of a compliment. In 200 pages, you still had a college robotics major going to the scene of a murder and then touching the victim, getting blood all up on her hands, and no one on the police force even batting an eye over the blatant crime scene tampering that was happening. Then there's the fact that in the book, multiple balloon boys, including BB, JJ, and whatever other ridiculous combination of letters you can come up with, are canon too. But you know what? I still gotta appreciate lines like page 183. You never know when a corpse may wander out of the shadows wearing a rabbit suit. Even the books have become self-aware of their own absurdity at this point. Now at this point, Scott has made it clear that the books and the games are separate canons. And while that may be true, both are still shambling their way out of Scott's mind brain. We all know that Scott leaves plenty of holes in his stories, details or events that are left purposefully vague so that we can theorize to fill in those gaps. But what's interesting is that he leaves different holes in each series. And by looking at the two series in tandem, those holes start to fill themselves in with events from the sister location. No, just no. Anyway, reading Twisted Ones was like reading the crib notes for Sister Location, because a lot, and I mean a lot of that game's weirdness became more and more clear as I turned more and more pages. So FNAF 6 may be dead, but we're gonna go back to beat the dead horse animatronic that is Sister Location. Can we name it Horsey? Horsey, the dead horse animatronic. We just beat it every time we do an episode about one of these games. Great. Dead horse animatronic Horsey one final time, because thanks to the Twisted Ones, we have all the information we need to help that game make just a little bit more sense. First, how do we know that this book is anywhere close to related to Sister Location? Well, it's easy. The answer's in the title, The Twisted Ones. The recurring thread in the book will be so-called twisted animatronics. But even though we're supposed to think that this is a new breed of killer robot, they're not. Not at all, in fact. We've seen them before in Sister Location. Check out this description and let me know if it sounds familiar. Page 90, the creature had no fur and his face was smooth. It had a short muzzle and oval ears sticking out from the side. It had the general appearance of an animal's head, though much larger than the animatronic animals of Freddy's. Running down the center of its face was a long, straight split, exposing wires and a line of metal frame. A thick plastic material was stuck to the face of the working patches. So the twisted animatronics have a plastic-like covering and a face that splits open. It certainly sounds like the aesthetic of the Funtime animatronics, but it doesn't stop there. These guys were built to be big because their mission is to capture children, like footballs out for revenge. Page 140. Freddy's face slid across the bed like a python. His head lost its shape as it folded outward, taking hold of her feet and beginning to swallow, moving slowly upward as she fought not to scream or fight, his cheeks and chin dislocating further. It no longer resembled a living thing. Before she could struggle further, her arms were pinned to her side, trapped inside the thing. Only her head remained free. She gasped for a last breath, then was violently scooped up and soup at the creature. She done got scooped. Then, a few pages later, she was inside a cavity made for a human being, but the suit was moving with complete autonomy. In case you've forgotten, this is exactly what we see in Sister Location's hidden animatronic blueprints. Oversized robots with special containment features to lure in and trap small children. Even the description for how people get scooped into the animatronics is reminiscent of Sister Location's horrific ice cream minigame with Baby. Page 92. The animatronic's arms lifted and its chest opened like an iron gate. Its metal pieces slid out of place to reveal a dark, gaping pit where sharp spikes and spring locks were just barely visible. It was a trap, waiting to be triggered. She beat against its bent and damaged arm, but the other arm steadily forced her closer to the chest cavity. So why does any of this, and the Twisted Ones as a whole book, matter in the context of the FNAF games? Well, in the opening sequence of Sister Location, we hear that the Funtime animatronics were built by William Afton.
With all due respect, those aren't the design choices we were curious about, Mr. Afton.
A guy who, up to that point in the series, had only been named in the first book, Silver Eyes. By the end of the book, we learn that William is Purple Guy, the killer who kidnaps kids while wearing a golden Bonnie suit. But Silver Eyes also introduced us to other important characters for the FNAF series as a whole, including Henry, no last name given, William's partner and the more creative half of the company, the one who actually created the animatronics. So after reading Silver Eyes, we were left with William, the business guy who doesn't create robots but does kill children, and Henry, the creator who does create robots but doesn't kill children. Got all that? good. Now, in my FNAF 5 Decoded video, I drew parallels between Henry and a mysterious figure that we saw during a secret cutscene of FNAF 1, both of whom create animatronics and commit suicide. Long story short, in the game, he ends his own life because he created Baby, a robot that he's ashamed of. In the book, why Henry kills himself is still a big part of the mystery. Now, if you want more information about the parallels between these two characters, click the eye icon in the upper right-hand corner of the screen because I go more in-depth there. But after that video, it seemed like a lock. We finally had some solid leads as to who these key players in the games were, and the clues were coming from Silver Eyes. But then that opening cinematic from Sister Location played the first time we all booted up the game. Afton acknowledged that he was the one who created the new robots. And everyone, including myself, was like, well, there with that theory. Afton was supposed to be the business guy, not the creator. So if he's the one who builds animatronics in the game, then Henry must not exist in this universe. Scott had pulled the wool over my eyes, or at least retconned huge parts of his story to keep me off the scent once again. Except not. The theory was right the first time. The Twisted Ones book confirms that both Henry and William Afton create animatronics, with the originals being built by Henry and the Twisted Funtime style animatronics being Afton's. On page 92 of the Twisted Ones, we see the main character Charlie, daughter of Henry, talking about one of these new animatronics. Whoa, the hardware, the joints, it's older technology. Maybe he made them earlier? I don't know. I recognize some of this as my dad's work, but then a lot of it's foreign to me. Someone else may have had a hand in it. I'm not sure if my dad made it or not, but I have a feeling he's the one who buried it. Oh yeah, by the way, in the book, the Twisted animatronics bury themselves during the day and come out at night to nab people. Animatronic zombies. Why not? It is probably one of the things that makes more sense in the book, honestly. Anyway, it's continually hinted at throughout the book that these animatronics weren't built by Henry. My father wouldn't. He always put stops so that the joints could do things humans can't do. And then again, on page 113, the bear was fighting. An imitation of Freddy created by someone else. It was a strange variation, into which her father had never breathed life, but William Afton did. And then finally, William Dave, maybe Purple Guy Springtrap Afton, confirms it on page 186. Did you think my robots would be as poorly designed as your father's? So there you go. The original theory still stands. Henry and William can both be active players in the game universe because both build animatronics. And if you need even more evidence, let's think about it this way. At the end of FNAF World, Henry admits that he created Baby, and then he kills himself ashamed of his creation. At the beginning of Sister Location, we see that Afton is still alive, he's claiming creation rights, and he's obviously proud of his new robots. Then, at the end of the game, his son Michael Afton says that he's gonna come find his father.
Father, it's me, Michael. I'm going to come and find you.
Thus, William is still alive, Henry is dead, but both must be a part of these games. And that's an important detail to solidify because the book also confirms something that FNAF theorists had been speculating about since the release of Sister Location. One of the weirdest details from that game was hidden in Funtime Freddy's room, where a map of FNAF 4's house was above and directly connected to the map of the Sister Location facility. It was also something that was linked throughout the Silver Eyes novel. Again, something that I covered in a previous theory, linked via those iCards in the upper right-hand corner. But Twisted Ones not only confirms this underground bunker for Sister Location exists, it also confirms whose house it's built under. Henry's. In the novel, we see the Twisted animatronics capturing the character Charlie. Again, Henry's daughter, and drop her off at some remixed version of the FNAF Korea. I say remix because, like a lot of this book, it's a weird hybridization of the things that happen in the games. And boys from the FNAF 2 location, but then there's caves and a waterfall for some reason. Because why not? FNAF 7, Under the Sea! Earlier in the book, Charlie and her boyfriend John, who admittedly has to be the most patient and loving boyfriend in the history of the universe, like Charlie shows him no sense of affection. He is there just like a sad puppy dog. It is tragic. Anyway, those two go to visit Charlie's childhood home, which has been destroyed by a storm. And what they find is that the storm has broken down a wall to reveal a new room, a secret room hidden in their house that Charlie had never known about. Whoa, it's not even part of the house. We've never seen this room before. The walls were made of dark concrete. The room was small and windowless. A box jammed into the house and sealed away beneath the room. And out there killing people came from there. When the storm broke the wall, the section of the house was sealed until the storm broke through. What's really important here is what's revealed when Charlie and the gang escaped from that underground pizzeria. On page 193, we're out! We're okay! Slowly she walked to the franchise as we know it that I can't not talk about it here. On Sister Locations Night 3, Michael Afton's big task is to remove a power module from One-Time Freddy. After following the narrator's instructions on which buttons to press and what order to press them in, Freddy's chest pops open and the power module reveals itself. And it's this little blinking black dot, oddly unconnected to literally anything else in the animatronic, and in a pretty unusual place, just kinda stuck on, slightly off to the side. I remember thinking at the time that this was an odd design choice for something that was supposedly powering the whole animatronic, but how would I know? No one, and I mean no one, called this thing out, considering Night 3 in general was just kinda forgettable, overshadowed by the misery that was the Spring Lock Challenge on Night 4, and the fascinating map Easter eggs hidden on Night 2. But of course, this is Freddy, and no detail is too small in this series, and Twisted Ones blew the lid off this disc's true purpose. Being so important that it's the reason they're called the Twisted Ones in the first place. Stick with me now, because I'm not making any of this up. That little device from Sister Location is actually a mind control disc. Gases and requisite eye rolls. I don't blame either of those reactions. Let me explain. Throughout the book, anytime the Twisted animatronics show up, people start to feel weird side effects. Page 91 and 92. As her hand touched the creature, a wave of nausea hit, but it lasted only a split second. Something else about it transformed at the same time. Its artificial skin became luminescence, and its movements were fluid and sure. Its casing suddenly appeared to have skin and fur, though they were blurry, flickering like a trick of the light. Now, after destroying one of these Twisted animatronics, Charlie and Toy Toy John discover a weird object embedded in the machine. About the size of a $50 coin. She held it up to her ear. Wow, that's really high pitched. I can barely hear it. The sound is why you feel sick. It emits some kind of signal. It changes what those things look like. It changes our perception of what they look like. Charlie corrected. Freddy's image flickered like static on a television screen. The color faded from his fur, and everything that made him Freddy winked out, leaving only a smooth plastic figure in his place. It looked like the rest of the animal in the room, a blank mannequin stripped of its characteristics. These aren't made out of fur and fabric. They're made by us, by twisting our minds. You shot the chip, you killed the illusion. Twisting our minds, you say. Roll credits! Now, for as ridiculous as a small disc that emits sounds that gets your brain to change the way it perceives the world around you sounds, it's actually kind of based in scientific fact. The brain is constantly having to process tons of information, so it is always looking for shortcuts. For instance, if I show you this text, you're probably going to be able to read it really quickly, right? It's because the brain isn't reading text by individual letters, but rather by the context of the other words around it, the way it expects the sentence to go, and making guesses off the most frequent short words that it sees on a daily basis. The same is generally true in visual perception. Without going into detail here, it's how optical illusions work. And there's been plenty of research on how the brain fills in visual gaps that it experiences. So the idea that a disc is shooting out sounds that distract you and thus cause your perception of reality to change to stuff that you're actually more familiar with isn't as far-fetched as it might seem. At least not as far-fetched as robots haunted by dead children. For unsuspecting victims, which is literally a thing that happens in Climate Change book, not no spoiler alert. And of course, it probably goes without saying, but these little mind control discs were created by none other than dear old dad, William Afton. Now, he was writing along one edge. She had to bring the piece of plastic close to her face and take the letters out. They were tiny, written in an old flowing script. They read, Afton Robotics, LLC. Charlie dropped the disc immediately. Afton? William Afton. That's my father's old partner. That's Dave's real name, John finished. I thought he was just a business partner for Freddy's, she said slowly. I guess he did a bit more than that. So why and how does this matter in the context of the games? I actually think it has the potential to explain a lot. Hey, you're just being distracted. What's the purpose of that? Freddy to look more real, to lure kids closer. And that's something we definitely see at play throughout Sister Location. It was even in the animatronic blueprints that we discovered. Weird technology put in place to lure and trap kids. Now, this is speculation, but remember Sister Location's secret control room that allowed us to observe the crying child's bedroom, as well as other key locations from FNAF 4? On the map, they were labeled as observation rooms. Could that be what William was observing? The effects of his mind casting discs on children. Could FNAF 4 not have been a dream, a nightmare, a hospital hallucination, whatever, but rather the twisted dreams generated by these distraction discs? But even beyond that, I think these discs explain a topic that I have actively avoided throughout all my theories on this series: the phantom animatronics from FNAF 3. Remember way back to FNAF 3 when this was supposed to be the final boss battle? There was only one real animatronic out to get you, Springtrap. All the other main jump scares were hallucinations in a building that had a high-pitched whining noise the whole time. And especially when it came to the puppet attacking you. Weird that these hallucinations are happening around a time when there's high-pitched noises around, like these discs emanate. And notice that the ventilation in the game would only tend to drop after you had been scared, not before. It's as though these hallucinations aren't coming from a lack of oxygen, like Bone Dude says, but rather from some other source. A disc. A disc specifically designed to manipulate your mind and bring forward all the horrific memories that you have buried in it. And regardless of whether you think Springtrap is Michael Afton or William Afton, which is honestly a theory for a whole nother day, one thing you can't deny is that these discs, Springtrap, and the Afton family are all connected, meaning that their use in a game where you're coming into direct contact with a giant golden bunny definitely makes a whole lot of sense. Could they also be the explanation for the other random Easter eggs we've seen throughout the series? The Lolbit mask, and the Mini Rena's random appearances in the control room of Sister Location. The Phantom Freddy and Phantom Bonnie from FNAF 2. I mean, the FNAF 2 location does make an appearance of sorts in the book, with the discs hidden in the lights of the building. Maybe even the hallucinations of It's Me way back in FNAF 1. The ramification of discs like this changes everything, and we physically see them present in Sister Location. So even if Scott is tired of the franchise, that doesn't mean it has to end without the answers that we've all been waiting for. You know what? I'm here for you to try and put together this mess of a puzzle as a community of theorists. There's still plenty more to speculate about as the Twisted Ones opens the door to even more interesting and even more absurd ways of maiming and murdering children with Chuck E. Cheese-style robotics. And I haven't even gotten to how I think the main character of the book series is probably a robot. But again, those are all theories for other days. In the meantime, remember, that's just a theory. A game theory. Thanks for watching. You know, at this point, FNAF is 3 years old. 3 years. That means most of you younger fans of the series are probably hitting that special time in your life where hair starts to appear in places that it never used to before. Like in between your eyebrows, fusing them together to form the much dreaded unibrow. Take my advice, this is for your own good. Don't be like me. Don't make the mistake and think that a unibrow is okay. Unipat was a dark, dark time in my life that I choose to forget. No, learn from my mistakes and do the right thing. Get to shaving, my friends. Dealing with awkward body hair sucks, so why make the shaving process suck too? Treat yourself to the club. Dollar Shave Club, literally the best, easiest, and cheapest shave you will ever have. Why is it the best? Because their executive razor rocks. Metal and firm, standing head and shoulders above the flimsy plastic store razors that cost you even more. Why is it the easiest? Because screw having to put on pants and go out in public. Stay hidden away from the world while new razor heads and shave butter get delivered right to your door. No human interaction necessary, which is great for all you introverts watching right now. And why is it the cheapest? Because for a limited time, new members get their first month of the executive razor with a tube of the Dr. Carver's shave butter for only $5, and with free shipping. After that, razors are just a few bucks a month. That is, calculating it now with my math brain, a $15 value only available to you theorists right now exclusively at dollarshaveclub.com/MattPat. That's dollarshaveclub.com/MATPAT. In your first month box, you get the awesome weighty handle, a full cassette of 4 executive cartridges, and a tube of shave butter. So say goodbye to Unipat and say hello to social acceptance and silky smoothness. Again, learn from my mistakes, ladies and gentlemen. Life post-puberty will never be the same. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have a ridiculous math question in store for next week's episode that I need to go solve. I will see you then. Rise and...
Why, with enough belief, you could even cheat death itself. Cheat death itself. Cheat death itself. Death itself. Cheat death itself.
You know, it really is uncanny how these two games overlap. Hello, Internet! Welcome to the 200th episode of Game Theory. I mean, technically it's the 201st and a half episode because we had a mini theory way back on the channel a long time ago that's now privated because of reasons, and then technically the Bendy episode last week was the 200th episode, but I thought this felt more appropriate because it's solving FNAF with one final mega theory, so the 200th episode of Game Theory, proud members of the Pink Guy Truthers Club. Now, for those of you who don't know, one of the longest held debates in FNAF theorydom is whether this murderer watching children die is the same as this murderer watching children die. Because of their different colors, they became dubbed Purple Guy and Pink Guy, the two most threatening colors. Taste the rainbow, slaughter the rainbow. Anyway, since FNAF 2, I have been opposed to this theory, and I can now confirm it is dead. Like a child wanting a mediocre slice of overpriced pizza, dead. Ding dong, the witch is dead. One look at Scott's new strategy guide for the series, The Freddy Files, confirms it. Page 48, when describing the Foxy Go 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 minigame from FNAF 2, quote, Purple Guy is visible in the lower left corner of the room. There it is, clear as crystal. Purple Guy in the corner. Now comes the super awkward question that I never thought I'd have to answer. Which Purple Guy? Because there's two now, and if you didn't know that, strap in, it is gonna be a long episode. FNAF as a franchise has always been defined by questions. What was the missing children's incident? Who is Purple Guy? What's the deal with Balloon Boy? Seriously, what is the deal with Balloon Boy? But by FNAF 4, the games had just become a mire of unanswered questions where it was becoming harder and harder to tell the difference between a withered Freddy, a phantom Freddy, and a Nightmare Freddy, let alone a Golden Freddy versus a Golden Fredbear. We had Fazbear Frights, Fazbear Pizzas, Fazbear Entertainment, Fredbear Diners, Fredbear and Friends, Missing Children, Crying Children, and bites from pretty much every decade. Then came Sister Location, where, between the butter and bongos, theorists, myself included, struggled to try and fit together a story told by animatronics that lie, hand units that lie, animatronics that fuse with other animatronics, and animatronics that fuse together with humans, who then become purple and immortal. Needless to say, it was a lot. For me, what made the scariest part of FNAF wasn't the jump scares, it was the lore. So you can understand why when the novels came out and offered what seemed to be simpler solutions, I hopped aboard. I started looking for more streamlined solutions within their pages, hunting for clues to the games in a place where they didn't exist, but kind of looked like they exist and probably should have existed, but didn't exist. And the only thing I accomplished in the process was making things more complicated. So in all the time that FNAF 6 has been percolating in the back of Scott's mind brain, I've thrown out everything that I thought I knew about this series, and I've gone back to doing what I do best. Darn it. Basic counting. 1 Freddy button, 2 Freddy buttons, 1 Foxy Toe, 2 Foxy Toes. Only this time, I was aided by knowledge of where the series was headed, as well as Scott's latest release, The Freddy Files. It's a book that many others dismissed as merely an elongated strategy guide to the games, but to me, it was invaluable at filtering down years' worth of lore into the details that Scott himself deemed as the most important to focus on. And this entire process of starting at square one has helped me to see connections I'd never made before, enabling me to create the thing I was most scared of. A timeline. A series of events that explain key breadcrumbs that Scott has left for us along the way. And the more I looked, the more it all started to make sense. And that's the plan for this video, and spoiler alert, the next video, to create a final, definitive, lore-based theory on the insanity that is FNAF. Putting to rest the key lingering questions in the first 5 entries of this franchise and opening the door for Scott to usher in FNAF 6. Since, at this point, we all know he's just waiting for us to solve the previous games before he releases the new one, right? Come to think of it, maybe I shouldn't finish this theory. Now, while I could sit here and rattle off hexadecimal color codes and animatronic design features to painfully hammer out the timeline inch by inch, no one cares. Trust me, I know I wrote 2 other versions of this script where I did exactly that, and both of them sucked. I was boring and confusing myself. It gets way too convoluted way too quickly when you dive into the details. But when I took a step back, I realized that the best way to understand FNAF at this point in history is to know that it's not a story about a haunted pizzeria, it's the story of a family. Meet the Aftons, a perfectly normal family of 5. Father, daughter, son, older brother, and mother. And the secrets of the Fazbear timeline are actually buried in the fates of each one of these characters. We begin with William Afton, the original Purple Guy, the father, the one who starts this whole timeline with a story that's all too familiar to us by this point. He starts killing kids at bare animal-themed pizza restaurants. It starts back in the 70s. Should have given him a big purple afro there, Scott. FNAF 2 flashes us back to these origins, showing us Purple Guy's first victim at Fredbear's Family Diner, before flashing forward to show another 5 victims of the Purple Guy in the FNAF 2 location, and potentially yet another 5 victims in the FNAF 1 location. And he would have gotten away with it too if it weren't for those meddling kids. Literally, because his victims refuse to stay dead. The soul of the first child enters the puppet, who then gives life to the other children by preserving their spirits in the bodies of the other Fazbear animatronics. Give gifts, give life. We've all known this for years, and Scott even confirmed it, but we had to start somewhere since this is where the story begins. But where the story heads to next might surprise you. Sister Location. More specifically, the mini-games from Sister Location, where we meet Afton's adorable green-eyed daughter, No Name. Doesn't help that none of these characters have a name. You see, old Billy Afton isn't content with manually killing kids anymore. He's busy figuring out new ways to mass murder the youth of this nation, and he does what any good business owner ought to do, outsources it to the machines. He designs a series of fun-time animatronics with features specifically made for luring and capturing kids. We can see it on their blueprints: parental tracking, grouping, deter and misdirect, parental voicing, and once again, he would have gotten away with it too if it weren't for those meddling kids. Or kid, in this case. His own daughter, in fact, who is so excited by the circus baby animatronic that she ignores her father's warnings to stay away from it and falls victim to the Claw. True FNAF fashion, she done gets herself scooped, goes on to possess Circus Baby, and that causes the eye color of Baby to shift from blue to green. The tragedy results in the spin-off restaurant, Circus Baby's Pizza World, closing down in one day. The day it opens, and the fun times get stored, as the trailers say, deep below ground, where memories sleep, just waiting for the day that they become rentals, one Afton down. Now before we kill off the next Afton child, let's rewind a minute to explain why Afton's daughter getting turned into human Froyo goes here, since this is a pretty extreme break from how most people understand the FNAF timeline. Evidence the first, not only do we see the animatronics actively moving around their respective galleries, but their luring and capturing features were built with the specific intention of them acting as free-roaming robots, something that we know was phased out in the aftermath of the bite of '87. We also know that this incident happens before Springlock suits get decommissioned. On night 4 of Sister Location, Baby traps you inside a Springlock suit and says this:
You're inside something that came from my old pizzeria. I don't think it was ever used. At least not the way it was meant to be used.
So Circus Baby and her pizzeria were from a time before the
unfortunate incident at the Sister Location involving multiple and simultaneous spring lock failures,
which prompted all spring locks to be banned, aka the bite of '83. More on that whole thing in a minute. But perhaps the biggest clues to the timeline placement of the Baby incident come from FNAF 4, what most of us have considered the first game in the timeline, where the crying child gets bitten at his birthday party while psychic friend Fredbear, he's here, he's there, he's everywhere, who you gonna call? Psychic friend Fredbear, promises to put him back together. Throughout the game, the crying child, Afton's youngest son, keeps hearing the words, "Remember what you saw," repeated over and over to him. When the game first came out, the best I could do was speculate about what this was referring to, but now I think we have our answer. This moment. His sister getting scooped. The crying child saw this happen, thus prompting his fear of animatronics. And we know he saw it through one crucial design detail that Scott included. Look at how this kid's nightmares of Fredbear materialize. The stomach. People overlooked, but there it is, positioned in the exact same way that Baby rips in half to claw grip Afton's daughter. It's how a child would perceive that incident. That's true. It also explains why the Afton home has an empty girls' room in it, something that Scott clearly thought was important for us to see. So why is it empty? Because the sister is gone. She's dead. She's a victim of William's sloppy kidnapping scheme.
Just to be clear, I know a previous theory said this girl was Baby, but she's not. It was a predictive theory based on visual similarities that didn't pan out. In Sister Location, Scott very clearly showed us that Afton's daughter doesn't wear hair. Pigtails has a different color of hair than the pigtail girl in FNAF 4. And we all know how big Scott is about colors. At least at this point in the series. We learned a lesson after the whole thing, I think.
That's not all. Laura also gives us an interesting perspective as we move on to the next member of the Afton clan. Here's a big question that no one's thought to ask about this series yet. The mother, Mrs. Afton, where is she? I mean, don't get me wrong, adoption is a great thing, but something tells me that Slick Willie over here isn't the single father of 3 tough. It was a question that I had never considered until the answer practically slapped me in the face while I was reading the Freddy files. On page 127, Scott draws a very clear contrast between Funtime Freddy's whole system and the one belonging to Baby and Laura. Quote, Funtime Freddy's honestly never considered. Ballora is much more aware of her surroundings, responding in real time to movement in her chamber and not seeming to rely on pre-recorded lines like the more rudimentary animatronics. It seems like more than just a coincidence that the only other robot possessing this level of speech ability is the one that we know has active daughter inside of her. Up until now, we've all been quick to write off Ballora as just this weird Rule 34 bizarre new addition to the animatronic roster. But is it possible that she has a bigger part in the story than we all realize? This is far from speculation. Another major clue hides in the song that she sings, one that Scott draws particular attention to in her character profile in Freddy Files. The lyrics go,
"Why do you hide inside your walls when there is music in my halls? All I see is an empty room, no more joy, an empty tomb. It's so good to sing all day, to dance, to spin, to fly away."
This reference to an empty tomb devoid of joy resembling with the child's bedroom acting as a sort of tomb reminding them of their walls. Could it be that this song is referencing the daughter's empty room that we just talked about from FNAF 4? And if that's the case, does that make Ballora's true identity? Ballora is motherly in a way that all the other animatronics aren't, with mini Renas as her children. And she's a much older and more mature-looking robot than anything that we've seen throughout the series. If this were truly the case, based on her song, it sounds like after the daughter done got herself scooped, William retreated into his work and probably a fair bit of child murder, hiding in his private room to bury his grief. That's what Ballora's line, "hiding inside your walls," is referencing. It would also explain why William is abandoned the time we see FNAF 4 roll around. He's too grief-stricken, leaving the older brother to be the one to have to take care of the crime. Somewhere in his wife leaves him or dies or something. It's not really that important. And Afton preserves her memory inside the animatronic Ballora. With that, another Afton gets buried in the basement. Which brings us to 1983 and leaves the men of the household as the last one standing. Crying child, older brother Michael, and the fate of William. One gets bit, one gets scooped, and one gets sprung? I don't know, that sounds kind of bad. Regardless, the debate of whether Michael or William is the true purple guy who ends up in Springtrap is part of next week's video, along with how we know that this is 1983 and my definitive answer on who the crying child becomes. So make sure you ring the subscription bell down below to find out next week as soon as part 2 of this ultimate FNAF theory airs. Seriously, do it, otherwise you'll never know how this series ends, and you'll forever be wondering whether it's Will Trap or Mike Trap. And then FNAF 6 will come out and everything will be all higgledy-piggledy. And as a final treat for those of you who want to get super nerdy about the series and need more clarity timeline placements, well, if you look beyond just their fancier, more modern design, the evidence around the sister location animatronics points to them being earlier models. One detail of FNAF 4 that I've been kicking around in my head for a year now is the canonicity of the Halloween update. In the update, Scott included 3 new characters, Nightmare Mangle, Nightmare Balloon Boy, and Nightmare Marionette. The appearances of Mangle and Marionette were both labeled as non-canon to the series, but things hit a wrinkle with Nightmare Balloon Boy because he got a pass. He was deemed canon. And that set off huge red flags for me because it tells us a crucial detail. And by the time of FNAF 4, Mangle doesn't exist yet, and Crying Child hasn't seen the puppet. Balloon Boy does exist and has been seen by little Ginny Night Terrors over here. Logically, for Scott to officially say that Nightmare Balloon Boy Balloon Boy had to be around prior to 1983, which leads us to what we see in here in Sister Location. Sister Location's location is full of humanoid robots. Sure, there's Ballora and Baby, but there's also these little dolls that share a similar shape and visual style to Balloon Boy that you can see like an earlier pizzeria had a more human theme than the Fazbear restaurant. That restaurant, I believe, was Circus Baby's Pizza World. Now, one thing I know people are going to bring up, in Sister Location, Hand Unit says,
due to the massive success and even for something unfortunate, Freddy Fazbear's Pizza, it was clear that the stage was set, no pun intended, for another consideration.
Here, the location of Sister Location opened after Fazbear Pizza closed down with timeline, and you wouldn't be wrong, they are. But Hand Unit is talking about Circus Baby's entertainment and rentals. Baby and Ballora were built for Circus Baby's Pizza World, which, as I showed, came out long before that. This coincides with the rumor about Circus Baby's Pizza World and the pre-game teaser Scott released on Scott Game. Look, we ran over to Circus Baby's Pizza World and animatronics were built at an earlier time. Here, during the period when Rose Machines got a big thumbs up in the design department and was then sort of grounded in robots. Some of the rotation landed out for how Balloon Boy shows up in FNAF 2, while all the others got forgotten underground, only to be uncovered when Michael was sent to put them all back together. Wait, are you all still here? Oh good, because I have yet to say it. Remember, it's all just a theory. A game theory. See you next week for the finale to my final FNAF theory. Well, that's my final theory. I suppose I can do a science one and Bootstrap. And if there is eventually news for FNAF 6, I can do a predictive theory about it, I guess. By the way, did you ring that bell yet? You should, to celebrate our 200th episode, give or take 1.5 or so. But whatever, this one feels like a big event. And finally, you remember my YouTube Red Series Game Lab? Another episode is free for you to watch right now. No YouTube Red subscription required. Available internationally. No problems. Just click on it and watch. And it is, lo and behold, the FNAF episode. I put myself as well as 3 other YouTubers through a real-life version of the FNAF series. 100% recreated too. Battery-powered doors and everything. With limited energy. It's great. Check out how I do in a real-life version of FNAF. Click in the box. Right. Now, if you'll excuse me, I need to go record part 2 of this episode so that way you have it ready in time for next week. Not letting you down, not making you wait a questionable amount of time for the finale of this whole thing. We got this. It's gonna be a good one.
Hello again, theorists! Party plan today, and it's all for you! Are you ready for round 2? How are ya? Hey, turn back now!
Hello, Internet! Welcome to Game Theory, where did you know that Funtime Freddy was only in German? Come on, check it out!
Hello, little children!
司令官、疲れてない？
Come closer. I'll sing a song for you!
How wild is that? Forget Freddy Fazbear, it's Freddy Fuzzbar. Calling it right now, FNAF 5 gave us sister location, FNAF 6 gives us international expansion. So, this is it. The end of an era. My last FNAF lore theory until a new game gets released. Makes me kinda sad, actually. So let's make it a good one as we set out to finish the job that we started 3 whole years together. And spoiler alert, purple guy? It's not the phone guy. Believe me, I tried. So of the 5 Aftons, last time we had killed off 2. Mother and daughter who want to become Baby and Melora. Afton's daughter getting clawed results in the immediate closure of Circus Baby's Pizza World, leading the company to retire the creepy, rosy-cheeked characters deep underground where memories sleep. But now let's talk about one question I haven't addressed yet, and one that was on everyone's mind when we launched a sister location. Where is Chica in all this? For the first time in these games, one of the core 4 animatronics was just gone. That seems significant, right? And it is. I joked earlier about FNAF Lederhosen location, but it touches on an element of these games that we tend to brush aside, that there's a business element running through all of them. Corporate doublespeak and liability talk coming from Phone Guy, parent companies in the form of Fazbear Entertainment, franchising with sister location. So what if Chica is missing from Circus Baby's gang because she was her own independent mascot at the time? It's not just wild speculation either. In the Scott Games location's release, we got all sorts of hints in the form of animatronic maintenance schedules. It makes think there was a reference to something surprising. Chica's party, mentioned by name, definitive proof that the character was the mascot of another business existing at the same time as Circus Babies, which was also a client of Afton Robotics. Chica isn't in sister location because she isn't a part of the family yet. She's still a solo act, but we know by FNAF 4 she's clearly a part of the Fredbear and Friends lineup. So it would seem that Fazbear Entertainment grew by merging with or buying out other animal-themed restaurants in the area. She was the addition to the crew, and why she's a part of the series here on out. So no, theorists, contrary to popular belief, it wasn't just Scott Reiner, the amount of fan art. Let's be real here for a second. Bibs aren't sexy. Just saying it now. All in it like this. So Fazbear Entertainment decided to go all in on the animal-themed robots because the whole clown thing was just a stupid idea. I mean, seriously, William, do some market research. Americans are more afraid of clowns than global warming. Know your consumer, man. Anyway, FNAF 4, Fredbear's expanded to have himself some friends. This becomes so popular that they're in full sellout mode, complete with plushies, toys, a TV show, and the ever-popular item, masks. Get them now because I hear they're selling like a god church. None of this would exist if this were truly the first location. location in FNAF 4 is not where it all started like many have been assuming. What we're seeing here is something else, presumably what the TV says. Fredbear and Friends, a hybrid restaurant of old Fredbear characters, and the new spin-off character has their own spring-lock suit. Notice that the FNAF 4 Nightmare animatronics all have 5 fingers. The only other animatronic to have that feature, Springtrap. 5 fingers because the humans have fingers. Which leads us to one of the biggest debates in this franchise. 1983 or 1987. The bite at the birthday party makes it seem like it's 1987, but the TV says that it's 1983. Never before has so much nerve rage been prompted by discussion over trademark dates. Rage that lives on to this day, but now I can finally bring home to the store. This is 1983. We know this based on a recent Reddit post Scott made on the subject of whether or not he's ever retconned his story. Quote, "The truth is that I've done one actual retcon in the series, although I'm not going to say who it was. There have been other times, however, when my original intentions didn't work. In those instances, I make a point to clarify in the next game. I use the sister location to clear up a misconception from FNAF 4. And completing this obvious misconception from FNAF 4 was the year the events of the game took place, which, true to its word, private room camera code of 1983. When Mike Lester visits his father's control room decades after the fact, he sees a family home using cameras that were protected by one of the most powerful dates of his life. Regardless, neglectful father William participates in the worst Bring Your Son to Work Day program ever by taking his drama classes to a restaurant filled with robots he's afraid are gonna scoop him. And solidly in the no-help column is his older brother who taunts him mercilessly for his fears. The story comes to a climax when the brother's teasing goes too far, getting his younger brother chomped at his own birthday party. At the end of the game, William, through his psychic friend Fredbear observation plushie, patent pending, promises to put his son back together, except he's too late. We hear a hospital flatline faintly in the background as the cutscene ends, meaning that the child dies. But that's far from where his story ends. He appears in every other FNAF game because even though Daddy fails to put him back together, miraculously the crying child finds his way into becoming the ghostly Golden Freddy. For proof as to why, let's speed things up.
Remember what Scott said in his Reddit post? He tries to clarify things in the next game, and between FNAF 3 and FNAF 4, there's a point he made sure to clarify, the Happiest Day minigame. Notice the masks across the two games, not just symbolic imagery, but a direct reference to the masks worn during the crying child's failed birthday, Freddy, Foxy, Bonnie, Chica. The restaurant layout is also the same, just mirror flipped, with 3 party tables decorated with green, yellow, red, purple, and blue balloons. And it's a birthday party as evidenced by the cake. The puppet is recreating a birthday that was stolen from the crying child, and the mask that the crying child is seen wearing, Golden Freddy. But that's not all. The crying child gets taken by Death, aka Nightmare, an animatronic who just so happens to have an inverted Golden Freddy color palette. Yellow hat and hide with a black body as opposed to a yellow body with black accessories. Coincidence? I think not. It's also worth noting that Nightmare is one of only 2 canon animatronics to have a jump scare that's a static image with strange noises that crashes the game. The other, Golden Freddy.
Which leaves us with 2. William and Michael, father and son. Purple guy and other purple guy. The rest of the timeline is the story of a serial killer father and the son who's following behind, retracing William's steps to undo his father's cruel work and free the spirits of the dead children. This next bit we're all pretty familiar with since it's based on evidence from Phone Guy. The bite of 83 causes spring locks to get discontinued. William, acting as a technician across all the Fazbear restaurants, is responsible for handling the recalled suits and starts using the Golden Bonnie outfit to lure children into the secret safe rooms hidden in the back of each restaurant while he'll be safely off camera. He first strikes on June 26th at the FNAF 1 location. This murder, dubbed the Missing Children's Incident, eventually gets the place shut down, but results in Foxy, Bonnie, Chica, and Freddy getting newly murdered children to power their engines. Those animatronics, along with the puppet, get shifted to the FNAF 2 location along with some new toy robots linked to a criminal database to prevent a mass murder from happening again. Even some old favorites get pulled out of retirement, specifically Balloon Boy, and with that full roster, Freddy Fazbear's Pizza has its grand reopening. Now posing as a security guard, William, with his spring lock crank in hand, not phone, strikes again, causing the place to get investigated. William flees the scene, leaving the day shift security guard position open. Jeremy Fitzgerald moves up to fill the empty slot, but gets himself bit by the agitated animatronics in an event that comes to be known as the Bite of 87, an event that forces the company to cease any free-roaming activities of the animatronics from that day forward. The toy animatronics get scrapped for just sucking at spotting a child murderer, and the old robots get stored back at the original FNAF 1 location. At this point, though, William knows that these things are alive and angry at him, so he tries to dismantle them using the safe room as his cover. And it would have worked out too if it weren't for those meddling kids, or at least their meddling spirits, because he didn't calculate speculate that the spirits could live on without the animatronic shells. He tries to defend himself against these ghosts by ducking into his trusty murder suit, but his haste coupled with the moisture of the roof causes the spring locks to fail and Afton to get skewered inside of the big yellow bunny. The company, trying to save face and, let's be honest, their stock value, covers up William's crime spree by sealing off the safe room with the dying William Afton and now Springtrap inside. I know, but Michael likes the Springtrap. We're getting there. Management behave as though those safe rooms never existed and another Afton falls victim to a horrible fate. Only this time he absolutely totally deserved it. But now let's look at the final Afton, Michael. His story begins with the main gameplay of Sister Location, where Mike Afton, who we learn looks a lot like his father,
they thought I was you.
is sent by dear old dad to put his sister back together. A promise that William makes to apparently a lot of his kids. This request of Michael presumably happened some years earlier when Mike was still a child, before Afton ran away to escape murder charges, as implied by him saying, Mike succeeds in saving Baby, but gets himself scooped in the process, having his innards replaced with innards. As we see throughout the canon custom night cutscenes, this causes his body to slowly decay, turning purple, until Ennard abandons ship to look for a fresher body that'll draw less suspicion. Michael miraculously survives his Ennard enema, and here's where all sorts of puzzle pieces start to fall together. First, we know his name is Michael, but then we also know by Mike, as shown by his name tag on the hand here. This immediately connects us to FNAF 1's Mike Schmidt, the original security guard, a guy who eventually gets fired for tampering with the animatronics and his series. We all thought it was a funny joke, but now we know better. Scott doesn't do jokes. Not only does the name Mike match, but a rotting flesh sack with no innards would definitely be pretty smelly. And if, true to Sister Location, Mike's mission is to free the spirits of children killed by his dad, he would absolutely be guilty of tampering with the animatronics. It even provides us for an explanation as to why the animatronics would be trying to kill him in the first place. We hear it in Sister Location. He looks just like his father, which, man, William, if your face looks like a rotting corpse, might be kind of considered to be surgery. But if all that wasn't enough, we can even tie it in with Golden Freddy's behavior in the game. Anytime Golden Freddy appears in FNAF 1, he's accompanied with the flashing text of, "It's me." As we just saw, Golden Freddy contains the spirit of the crying child, Mike's brother. So it means one brother speaking to another brother, making him aware that he's here, he's present, and in need of spiritual release. Now, knowing that Mike Afton and Mike Schmidt are one and the same, rewind to FNAF 2 and the character Fritz Smith, a security guard fired on his first day on the job for what? Odor and tampering with the animatronics. Coincidence? Absolutely not. God doesn't do coincidences. Michael Afton is literally going location to location, undoing the sins of his father's past and stinking up the places as he do, like Michael says at the end of Custom Night. When he does,
but before we get to the end of the timeline, let's address the elephant in the room. The fact that Purple Guy is established to be the killer, and Michael is clearly shown to be purple in the Custom Night. So would that make him the killer? No. As much as I hate to say it, there are actually two Purple Guys, but only one real Purple Guy. Admittedly, I left that purposely vague for dramatic effect, but let me explain. Or better yet, let FNAF World explain. In it, you recruit a familiar-looking purple sprite onto your team, and he says this: "Don't confuse me with the actual Purple Guy. I'm just a game sprite." And there's the difference. One of these characters is physically purple. That character is Michael, and the other is just a placeholder on the screen. A sprite representing a shadowy figure who, because the background of the minigames happens to be black, had to be colored differently, and that color was purple. But you don't even have to get that mad. It's made clear in Sister Location's intro that William is the one who built animatronics intended to capture kids, whereas Michael is established as the one who's trying to save them. Even the timeline supports this. The murders date back all the way to Fredbear Family Diner in the 70s with a guy who's old enough to drive. There's no chance that Michael, the son, would be the right age to be the original Purple Guy. And lastly, if you believe that Michael Afton is also Mike Schmidt and Fritz Smith, as the evidence suggests, then the Phone Guy calls give you an alibi. Phone Guy is talking to you about other security guards being investigated for murder, which implies that you yourself are not guilty.
Mike's efforts to atone for his family's past proved to be successful. Game by game, we see him piece together the family reunion. Sister Location saw him free both Melora and as your right, Afton's younger brother, now in the form of Golden Freddy, receives via the Happiest Day minigame. Even the spirits inside Freddy, Foxy, Bonnie, and Chica get exorcised by Mike, which is why the good ending of FNAF 3 shows 4 empty, unlit animatronic heads. That's also why, come the main gameplay of FNAF 3, the only animatronic that's still active in real life is Springtrap. Mike has been successful at appeasing every other one of the spirits, leaving him alone with dear old dad. He gets a job as a security guard of Fazbear Fright, and shortly after, we stumble across FNAF 1's secret room with the remains of Mike's father spring-trapping around inside. Mike sets the place on fire to finish off his killer dad once and for all, because seriously, did you really think that building just spontaneously caught on fire? Fires in fictional stories always have a dramatic purpose, and Mike would have gotten away with it too if it weren't for that meddling who in both the FNAF 3 newspaper clippings and sister location special ending is shown to have survived the fire and is now undoubtedly more bloodthirsty than ever. The end? Question mark. Hallelujah. The craziest part of all this is when you actually stop and look at the story, there really isn't a need. Outside of the return of Springtrap cliffhanger and revealing what's inside the box, yeah, remember that, everything else pretty much has an answer. Sure, there are still parts of the tale that could be more fleshed out, like the origins of the puppet or what happens after Ennard gets ejected from Mike, but at this point, all the characters have completed their story arcs. The family is reunited and the spirits are all at peace. It's actually pretty poetic. It took nearly 20 theories and literally weeks of my life studying these breadcrumbs to get there, but we did it. We got to a solution that fit together practically all of the loose ends. And thank you for being a part of that journey with me. I have no doubt that this isn't 100% correct, but you know what? It's an explanation. One that I feel provides a sense of closure to the series, and one that I'm going to let stand as my final word on the 5 games worth of series lore until the new installment. Crap, a new installment that just so happened to get teased immediately after last week's part 1. Scott, don't go get predictable on me. Calling it now just so I can avoid the inevitable prediction theory. It's an installment that looks like it's going to be taking yet another step back in the timeline to tell the origin stories of the puppet. Notice how the sprites are the exact same as the FNAF 2 Big Cake minigames, where the first child gets murdered and the puppet pops out of the screen. Also notice that the rainbow design is a direct callback to the aesthetic of 70s technology, which is when Fredbear Family Diner and the first murder would take place. Lastly, the source code on Scott Games keeps saying, what is paragraph 4? Well, paragraph 4 could be related to politics. One thing that jumps out at me is that as soon as my episode went up, this teaser came out. Paragraph 4 of my episode last week happened to be about William Afton's character. Before I end all this, let me give the hardest of hardcore fans one more deep dive on the whole Will Trap versus Mike Trap debate. Let's speed it up. Most hardcore fans believe Mike is the purple guy currently in the Springtrap suit, and it's easy to see why. His voice is modified with an electronic effect and custom night ending. Springtrap pops up at the end of Mike's final words. Springtrap talking, or should I say Gurgle before it's FNAF 3. In Mike's very but oh no, your dad ain't dead. And we already talked about the win. Very well, we dismantled the animatronics to try and stop their attack. So it seems like a pretty balanced debate, or at least it doesn't. Look at the timeline. Based on order of events, William's trend is undeniable. Whoever's working this nightmare is going to get someone who has seen both the FNAF 1 and FNAF 2 animatronics, considering these hallucinations of Mango and the puppet, as well as the first generation version of Chica. The only person who looked at both those places outside of the FNAF itself is Michael Afton. Also, we hear that Circus Baby's rentals appeared in the wake of Freddy's Pizza being closed, but the safe room concealed was Springtrap inside while Freddy's Pizza was still open. That's why there's telling employees about the safe rooms, how to use them, and then, oh wait, no, we're closing them down and pretend like they never existed.
静かな海は嫌いじゃない。
If Mike were truly Springtrap, that would mean he never would have had the opportunity to get sued and turn purple since Circus Baby's rentals wouldn't have opened at that point, and he would have been trapped in the walls of the FNAF 1 location in the Springtrap suit. If Mike were Springtrap, then who set fire to Fazbear Fright? I guarantee that fire was intentional. It was meant to finish off the last one. This is a Freddy's legacy, and Mike's really the only one possessing that sort of that he got away from the spirits by hiding in his golden bodysuit, which seems very counter to how Mike behaves. Oh yeah, let's also not forget Scott confirmed our fears of years ago. If all of that doesn't convince you, hell, I look forward to watching your research. Alright, 12 pages later, I'm finally ready to close this thing out. But hey, that's just a theory. A game theory. Now don't get mad at me when the new game comes out in a few weeks and everyone tells me to do another theory about it. Hey, and a very special thanks to Kellen Goff, the voice of Funtime Freddy, who recorded that incredible intro. Please do me a favor and follow him on Twitter @Kellen Goff for all the latest on the projects he's working on, Freddy included, but also stuff like Hearthstone, which is really awesome. Also, if you want more FNAF action, watch me and Rosanna Pansino play FNAF FNAF 6. Yeah, that's right, FNAF 6 together. That's a new video on her channel, and the link is right on screen right now. We both get so scared by this darn game. And lastly, surprise, surprise, I actually do more than Freddy theories. If you want a new series to tide you over until FNAF 6, check out Hello Neighbor. It's great, and there's tons of theory fodder in there. Here's a theory to get you started. Just click that box on the right. Now, if you'll excuse me, I need a nap. Aw, no way, a text message. Who's it from? Aw, Jacksepticeye, how sweet. And there's a picture? Wait, that's not how I wrote this guy.
And to you monsters trapped in the corridors, be still, and give up your spirits. They don't belong to you. For most of you, I believe there is peace and perhaps more, waiting for you after the smoke clears. Although for one of you, the darkest pit of hell has opened to swallow you whole. So don't keep the devil waiting, friend.
I know we didn't get along all the time, but condemning me to hell seems a bit extreme. Seriously though, can we turn on some air conditioning here or something? It's getting a bit warm in here. Oh wait, it is me because I'm wearing my snuggly new Game Theory merch. And you too can be getting hotter than a serial killer in a burning death trap, because starting right now, new merch is available via the link in the description. Do you know the way to good fashion? Well, I will show you the way, because not only do we have this nifty hoodie with embroidered patches that make you feel like you're wearing a warm, stylish blanket, we also have new shirts with a stunning slimming design so you can look and feel great even after stuffing your face with budget pizza from a defunct children's restaurant. And they wash great, especially when you're using Tide Pods, go figure. It's gonna be spring soon, and spring tends to get kinda chilly. Don't worry, because I got you covered with another item that I think's the bomb. A bomber jacket, complete with Game Theory lining so that you too can pull a mat pad and walk around in jackets all year long, even when it's too hot to be doing so. Then for all those who want to secretly show off their theorist pride, we got socks! Because honestly, people who wear fun, colorful, nerdy socks are like my favorite people in the world. I have 20 pairs of nerdy socks ranging from like Deadpool to Rick and Morty, and now Game Theory's in the collection, and you can add it to your collection too. And finally, we have men's and women's underwear, perfect for your top and your bottom. Call it Game Theory Intimates. It's a new year, get yourself some new gear. Plus, every order comes with a special Winter 2018 pin, as well as a chance to win something that is really special. Only 100 orders will come packaged with this, a special limited edition Golden Fury coin. Not only is it just super cool to get a real gold coin, it also may serve as your ticket to a very special event happening later this year. It's basically like Willy Wonka and his golden tickets, except for gamers and less caloric. But I have to warn you, supplies of everything are super limited. We know that things took way too long last time to get to you, so we've partnered with a new team to ensure that you get your orders faster and with way better customer service. Unlike last time, everything is already printed, waiting in boxers and eager to find a new home in your arms, or on your stanky feet, or covering your unmentionables. Shipping is international, sizes are like what you'd get in the store, and again, to ensure that you get stuff fast, this is all super limited edition prints. Once it is gone, it is gone for good. So make sure you place your orders now, because who knows what'll be available a week from now. And once it arrives, send us a picture of you in the merch. Except for the underwear. I don't want to get arrested. Anyway, enough shilling. Let's talk about the end of this channel's most popular franchise. Hello, Internet! Welcome to Game Theory, where let's just take a collective moment and get this all out of the way. Say it with me now. Another FNAF video. You said the last one was gonna be your last. Yeah, I know, but I also said this. Now, don't get mad at me when the new game comes out in a few weeks and everyone tells me to do another theory about it. And true enough to form, that's exactly what happened. I released my final two-parter theory on the subject, and exactly 1 month later, FNAF 6, disguised under the fan game-esque name of Freddy Fazbear's Pizzeria Simulator, gets released. Now, at this point, I wouldn't be surprised if you all thought that Scott and I were the same person. Come to think of it, you have never seen us in the same room together at the same time. Anyway, the game came out over 2 months ago, and ever since I've had countless people asking me for the theory. Over 10 people in the last week alone stopped me on the street and asked for a FNAF episode. And that's not even mentioning all the emails I've gotten in that time. So for Ben, Steven, Phil, Cassie, Matt, Lucas, Sarah, Alex Matt number 2, and NBA Rookie of last year, Karl Anthony Towns. That's no joke, actually. As well as everyone who has sent in something requesting an episode on FNAF. This one, and potentially one squeezed between this one and the next theory, and maybe even a third one down the line at some point. Those are all for you. Now, FNAF 6 was a very different game from any of the ones that came before. Not because it had a weird roller coaster tycoon-esque metagame connecting all the security camera maintenance you've come to know and tolerate from this series, but because it's much more explicit than usual. This game has a lot of talking, accompanied by clear visual storytelling to reinforce what you're hearing, meaning that a lot of the major plot points of this game are fairly easy to understand, which has gotta be like a first for the entirety of this franchise. FNAF 6 is filled with a sense of finality. It's clearly meant to tie up all the loose ends and serve as the last game of the series. Or, let me be clear, the last part of the series covering what I'm gonna call the Purple Guy saga. It's like Dragon Ball Z up in here. A saga which begins with a series of murders that result in animatronics coming to life, continues with the Afton family meeting with a series of terrible fates, and ends with the spirits of everyone involved getting closure, one way or another. Because this game feels much more obvious in its story, many online theorists have chosen to focus on the major story beats, actively ignoring the game's more unusual bits, the wrinkles that don't quite fit in cleanly. But it's in those wrinkles that we find answers to some of the longest held questions of the franchise, and the clues that we need to finally put the whole puzzle together. So stick with me and prepare to get a little wrinkly like a toe left in the bathtub for too long, because while today is certainly a theory, or rather multiple theories all in one episode, it's also me trying to open the door to you guys, equipping you with the information necessary to discuss the final points lingering around the edge of this mysterious franchise. Finally closing the book on the Purple Guy saga. Now, before I get to the deep lore here, let me quickly run through the major reveals of this game just to make sure that we're all working with the same understanding. In the aftermath of FNAF 3's Happiest Day minigame, the spirits of Freddy, Foxy, Bonnie, Chica, and Golden Freddy have all been put to rest, which left only the lingering threads of Springtrap with William Afton inside, Ennard with Baby inside, Michael Afton, I'm a living corpse who used to have robot tentacles inside, and the puppet with nothing inside. Prior to the release of this game, Scott's two websites, scottgames.com and fnafworld.com, were talking to each other in their source code, a conversation which showed Baby and Ennard getting into a fight, and Baby basically getting voted out of the tribe, which is why in this new game the two are once again separate entities. Ennard in this game assumes the form of Molten Freddy, which, adding in this game's other new edition of Rockstar Freddy, brings the total number of different Freddy forms across the entire series to 12 different Freddys alone. And you'll wonder why this game is confusing to talk about. Baby, meanwhile, becomes Scrap Baby, complete with a lobster claw and roller skates because Scott was like, wee, it's my final game, I can make the designs whatever the hell I want to. Springtrap now has a cleft chin, and heck, why not? There's a weird black bear named Lefty, because why the heck not throw a 13th bear onto the pile? Throughout the game, you're not only tasked with handling the best characters ever, featuring such standouts as Number 1 Crate and Mr. Hugs, but every night you'll find one of your old friends out in that back alley, and it's your task per paragraph 4 of your employment contract to salvage that animatronic, bringing them into your establishment.
If you are playing this tape, that means that not only have you been checking outside at the end of every shift, as you were instructed to do, but also that you have found something that meets the criteria of your special obligations under paragraph 4.
Fast forward a couple nights to the true ending of the game, where we learned that the whole pizzeria was just a trap made to lure the stray animatronics into the same place at the same time, so that they and the horrors of Freddy Fazbear's could be finished off once and for all in a final blaze of glory, even though that technically happened once before Springtrap survived. But hey, who's counting? Me, but you know, what I do. And who of all people set up this trap? What is the identity of this mysterious cassette man? Well, the first clue we get is actually in the closing monologue.
Although for one of you, the darkest pit of hell has opened to swallow you whole. So don't keep the devil waiting, friend.
It's an old friend of William Afton's, no last name given. And if that lack of a last name sounds familiar, well, it should. I mentioned this guy a lot during that dark period where I used information from the books for my sister location theories. In the book series, he's the animatronic genius who partnered with William to create the Freddy bots. And this isn't only speculation. One of the secret endings, the insanity ending, proves that this is Henry. If during the game you buy this freak show feature for way too much money, it causes your computer's power button to switch from green to blue. If you then hold the power starting the computer in safe mode, it causes a hidden recording to play. An audio tape happens to play HRY. But the insanity ending shows us even more than just a light connection back to the novels, as Henry talks about his regret over ever helping William create the animatronics and his plan to lure everyone together to finish this off once and for all. We're shown a series of secret blueprints. Most of them provide a bit more detail into how this world works. We're shown that Afton's scooper from Sister Location functions by infusing things with, for lack of a better term, soul energy, what Afton calls remnant. This is how Michael was able to survive as a purple corpse enemy. We also see that Old Freddy, formerly Ennard, still contains the souls of Melora, Funtime Freddy, and Funtime Foxy, and that our mission under paragraph 4 is to specifically collect and destroy the Remnant once and for all. Remnant is destroyed by the again. We even learned the detail that literally no one was asking for, how to simulate children. The RASC, or Remote Activated Simulated C, I'm assuming stands for child, simulates body freeze and then runs around any childhood. Hence how you're able to lure all the murderous animatronics around in this game, also probably FNAF 3. But what's most surprising is the final Lefty, that oddball black bear that just showed up in this game. A bear that, according to its acronym, is programmed to lure something into a bracelet code and then encapsulated with a combination of lullabies and controlled shots. A bear suit that was made by Henry that has the sole purpose of capturing none other than the puppet. You can even tell it's already accomplished its goal if you look closely at this rare screen you sometimes get when you boot up the game. The signature striped art showing through the lefty animatronics. But it doesn't stop there. If you buy and then play the security puppet minigame 3 times over the course of your week in the restaurant, you see a child trapped outside the pizzeria wearing a bracelet. The puppet, a security device of all things, is trained to respond to her specific bracelet. It's green, and so it chases her outside only to find her short-circuiting from the rain that's pouring down around it, lies down next to her, the two fuse into one. And this lines up with exactly what we hear in the game's screenplay.
My daughter, if you can hear me, I knew you would return as well. It's in your nature to protect the innocent. I couldn't save you then, so let me save you now. It's time to rest for you and for those you have carried in your arms.
Henry's daughter, the first victim, is the puppet, the one who gave life to everyone that came after her and raised their souls in FNAF 3. Finally confirmed after I'd been predicting it for 3 years since the release of FNAF 2. So, there you have it. Henry from the books is now canon in the games. His daughter is the puppet trapped inside Lefty. Everyone, including Michael, dies in the FNAF 6 fire, and Baby's name is established as Elizabeth in Henry's closing monologue. It's all pretty cut and dry. And if you want to get really deep, the images on the walls in the alley are actually blurry contrasts. You can tell these are paragraphs, which I have seen more than enough time to identify at a glance. And all of that relates back to that theme of what is paragraph 4, which has been Scott's calling card for this game. The creepy imagery of the ventriloquist and clowning also see the alleyway isn't using some new game like a lot of people have been assuming, but rather it's just an artistic recreation of the Afton family. William is the ventriloquist, the dummy who looks exactly like him, represents Michael Afton, who, as we know, looks just like his father, just a smaller version of him, and has to parrot back a lot of what his father tells him to do. Elizabeth, aka Baby, is the clown, for fairly obvious reasons, and the bear on the leash is just Child, the child who is trapped and held back by his family, who ultimately dies in the hands of Freddy. And F6 even offers explanations for the inappropriate costumes that were mentioned by the phone guy calls from FNAF 3. Yeah, you remember those?
No replacements arrived, so be expected to wear the temporary costumes provided to you. Keep in mind that they were found on very short notice, so questions about appropriateness/relevance should be deflected.
They're the mediocre Melodies crew from this game, which also happen to match up perfectly to the other masks that you see during FNAF 3's Happiest Day minigame. A green one is Happy Frog, a blue one is Big Cat, the one is purple, there's some blue one for some reason, and then Orville the elephant is the orange one with the long nose. But for as much as FNAF 6 explains, and it explains a lot pretty explicitly, it leaves open 3 huge questions. 3 questions that no one has been able to answer for the past 2 months until now. Or at least I'm pretty confident that I can answer 2 of those those questions, for the third one, I'm gonna need your help. Now, you don't need too much to get that true ending. You just salvage all the animatronics and survive all the nights. It's basic FNAF 101. But there's another layer to this game, an ending that goes one step beyond just the base storyline. The Lore Keeper ending, where things start to get complicated in a hurry. To unlock it, you have to play 3 specific minigames through to completion: Security Puppet, Fruity Maze, and Midnight Motorist. Security Puppet was easy to explain. The others, though, are where the questions start to pop up. In Fruity Maze, the game starts to become more and more unstable as you progress levels. By the end of the 3rd stage, collectibles have transformed into slaughtered dogs and burial flowers. Your on-screen avatar is framed in bloody footprints, and the blonde-haired, blue-eyed girl reflected in the arcade screens crying. For good reason, since standing behind her is none other than the purple guy, dressed in his golden best. Now, this one's confused a lot of online theorists, but in my opinion, requires some process of elimination to solve. FNAF 6 is all about tying up loose ends, right? And at this point, Puppet set the souls of FNAF's core 4 of Freddy, Foxy, Bonnie, and Chica, as well as Golden Freddy free in the Happiest Day minigame. Baby, the sister location crew, Springtrap, and the Puppet are all taken care of by Henry in the true ending of FNAF 6, and the 3 toy animatronics from FNAF 2, which do seem to legitimately be tied to a security database, are scrapped at the end of their game. So what does that leave? Mangle. I'm not saying that the girl is Mangle, I'm telling you it's her dog. Mangle is William Afton's first successful experiment with a remnant, dog remnant. Which, now that I say it out loud, sounds a lot more like dog duty than Miracle Soul formula, but let me explain. We obviously see that the girl's crying, but it's not because she's scared. We actually see that Will Trap is able to have a normal conversation with her, saying, "He's not dead, he's still alive, follow me." She's crying because her dog died, as represented on the screen. And that's the scene that William's referencing here. Your dog is not dead, he is still alive. And we have proof that William isn't lying about this either. It's an odd detail that I've never talked about, which is pretty incredible that after so many of these darn videos, I'm still pulling out random factoids to piece into this puzzle. But in the Save Them minigame from way back in FNAF 2, you're in a building filled with 5 dead kids and Purple Guy. All the other animatronics are stationary except for one. Alive, well, and unlike every other animatronic in the entire series, roaming around on boards. Even though Mangle technically walks around on 3 legs, but a design that's so important that we see Scott keep it in Mangle's quest from FNAF 3 as well. Mangle is alive without the puppet giving him gifts or giving him life. So how is the Mangle animatronic moving in this moment? William experimenting and as we see in the Fruity Maze, William uses the fact that the dog is still alive to lure this girl to her death, allowing her to be reunited with her dog forever. For more proof, notice that the dead dog in the Fruity Maze minigame is actually missing an eye, a detail that we see at share with Mangle. Additionally, you ever notice how Mangle is the only animatronic that actually doesn't possess any human-like noises? The core 4 all feature moaning, sighs, or laughs at various points throughout the series. Fun times all talk, even the Nightmare animatronics breathe, which is a whole nother can of worms I'm not opening up today, but Mangle just has garbled radio noises, almost like its cognitive functioning is much less than all the other possessed creatures in the series. So that's Fruity Maze, but then comes the biggie. Perhaps the most vague and bizarre moments from FNAF 6 come from the hidden Easter eggs in the final Lore Keeper minigame, Midnight Motorist. It starts simple enough. Top-down racing game, but glitch through an opening at the bottom of the track, and suddenly you're on a rainy drive on a world-filled landscape, visiting a bar named Junior's, and eventually making your way to a lonely house hidden deep in the woods. Out pops the driver, he's orange? Thanks, Scott, we finally solved the identity of Purple Guy, and you just had to throw in one final monochromatic mystery. Orange Guy? I like to call him charges into the house and rages at the fact that someone, presumably his son, has locked himself in the room. He goes around and find a way in, only to discover the window is broken, a set of footprints, and spare tracks leading to, quote, that place. And that's it. The game abruptly ends there. No matter how many times you replay this game, it's always the same. It's weird. It's It's disturbing, and most of all, it's frustrating. Since it seems to introduce all new characters in a game that's mostly about every other character's story to a close. But are these truly new faces? No. Look at this house. A lone house in a clearing surrounded by trees. Believe it or not, we've actually seen this house before on the title screen to FNAF 4. A lone house in a clearing surrounded by trees. Not only that, but both houses have two stories. Even the roofs look roughly the same. But now think back to a quote that I mentioned last episode about how Scott writes these stories. Quote, "There have been other times, however, when my original intentions didn't come across clearly. In those instances, I make a point to clarify in the next game." FNAF 6 is all about clarifying, explaining Remnant, explaining the scooper, the puppet, and what's our connective tissue in this minigame? Someone sitting in a living room watching TV. And what did we see at the end of every night of Sister Location? Michael Afton going home after his shift to watch TV. That slouchy figure there may look like a balding grandma, but it's good old Mike Casual Bongos Afton himself binging on his Immortal and the Restless. And I can further prove it via his text. Scott is always roughly in your convention of dialogue colors being important. And this final game is no exception to this rule. Green bouncer dude talks in green, orange guy talks in orange, and Michael Afton on the couch talks in gray. Exactly like he did when he was laughing at his crying brother back in FNAF 4. It's definitely a slightly different shade, but he's also the only one in the entirety of this series to speak in gray lettering. They also both wear gray shirts, only the truly fashionable match their t-shirt to their font color. Couple all of that with him watching TV, the FNAF 4 title screen house, which always has a TV in it, and the character being protective over some him, say a younger brother, and you have yourself the perfect portrait of the Afton family, which would make Orange Guy Purple Guy, otherwise known as William Afton. He's even got a signature purple car, the same one that we saw him use in the FNAF 2 Take Cake minigame before he killed off Henry's daughter. But why? Why would Scott choose to make William Afton some color other than purple for like the first time ever in the final game in the series? The answer is actually because by this point in the series, there are two different purple guys, William and his son. It would have been confusing from a storytelling standpoint. Though, I do gotta say, Scott, it's not that much better since now you're swapping in a whole new color for a character who's been represented by another color the whole time. It's a bit confusing. Anyway, what does all of this mean? Why, out of all things, did Scott choose to show us this random scene? What is he trying to explain about the story through the battle between an orange William Afton and a runaway child? All of that in just a few days. This video is really long already. Plus, in a game that tries to answer everything from the entirety of the series, what was in the FNAF 4 box? Was it truly left forgotten forever? Is Scott waiting to reveal its contents in a future game? Make sure you take a bite out of that subscribe button to find out those final answers, as well as the solution to perhaps the biggest question of them all, the Lore Keeper's final screen. After unlocking all of these glitched minigames, Scott presents us with a series of gravestones filled with names. Some familiar, and some not so much. So, who are they? What do they reveal about the story? And how can you help me to solve Five Nights' last and most closely guarded secrets? All of that next time. In the meantime, though, remember, Game Theory merch is now available, but hopefully by this point it's selling out faster than a YouTuber with a Loot Crate sponsorship. So make sure you're getting your Theorist hoodie, shirt, jacket, socks, or underwear before they're gone by clicking the link you see on screen right now or in the top line of that description. The only thing scarier than FNAF? Missing out on these items, celebrating your Theorist pride. And remember, once this is all out of stock, the only merch left will be Logan and Jake Paul's. That, my friends, is a horror far scarier than deadly animatronics. Hello, Internet! Welcome to Game Theory in 2018, a show apparently dedicated entirely to virtual boxes, loot box psychology, loot boxes as gambling, the treatise on the science of fictional cardboard boxes. It's like box episodes are the new FNAF episodes for the channel. Gotta milk them dry! Next episode should be on, I don't know, the orange box or something. But in all seriousness,